Rise of the European Emperor by Taishan Laonyo.
Chapter 1221, Is Marin Dead? After all, Angela had not studied at Beijing Film Academy or La Masia Academy of Film Emperors, so she was not very good at pretending. Angela has been very happy these days since she knew her husband was back. When the tunnel was dug through, when Ma Lin saw her, he saw a silly woman who was laughing foolishly. No, it's easy for people to see the flaws in you. How can you lead the snake out of the hole if you are so realistic? Ma Lin was very dissatisfied. Coco, I'm not very good at acting either, Angela said aggrievedly. Ma Lin patted his head depressedly. Fortunately, the news of his death had not been released yet, and Angela didn't need to pretend to be sad immediately. There was still time. Well, I'll train you these days and teach you how to pretend to be sad. There was no way, Director Ma could only personally go out and check the script with the actress Angela. Fortunately, it was originally his own little cabbage, so there was no greening. Come on, the first scene of crying, Marin died. Prepare, action. Ma Lin made a board for himself, without a photographer or an assistant director. Angela looked at Marin innocently, my husband is right in front of me, how can I cry? Director Ma was so disappointed that he was the #1 coal boss in Europe and wanted to support the person next to him, but his understanding was too poor. What should I do if I can't cry? Angela was a little helpless. Marin gritted his teeth and said, then we can only use props. Then, Angela was put on onions and tears flowed, Marin, you bastard, I won't strangle you to death. However, when the tears flowed down, Angela had no sad expression, only anger. Marin looked straight and his acting was too poor, much worse than Shinro. It seems that some strong medicine is needed. So, Marin suddenly changed his face and yelled at Angela. After that, he pulled Angela over and whipped her hard. But it was really whipped, not just playing around. It was pretending to whip and really touching. Then, Angela cried in pain, her face full of grievances. Yes, that's the feeling, remember it. Marin said excitedly. Angela rushed over angrily and wanted to bite Marin, but was stopped by Marin, we are doing business, don't make trouble. The aggrieved Angela had to cover her butt and looked at Marin with red eyes. Marin thought for a while and added, Angela, do you remember the days when you were hunted before we met? Angela nodded, as if she was lost in memory. Yes, recalling the desperate mood at that time. Just like now, women whose husbands have died are also full of despair. Marin succeeded, and Angela really became sad. For the next 2 days, Angela had a sad expression. However, a new problem came. Angela was too deep into the play, sleeping with Marin, and muttering, my man is dead, fuck, you are so deep in the play, don't get depressed. Marin was also scared female sign, but it will take several months to act, it would not be worthwhile if he makes his wife mentally intoxicated. In the end, Marin gritted his teeth and gave up the plan to let Angela pretend to be sad. Since you can't pretend to be sad, then you have to use this trick. Which trick? This is the expressionless face paralysis that the famous Shenxian Fei is good at. In addition to Shenxian Fei, many people have also used this trick. Because this does not require any acting skills. As long as you pretend to be paralyzed, you can deal with many situations, and you are also a goddess. Moreover, the paralysis face is also suitable for women who have dead men. After all, this expression can also represent discouragement and many functions. The most important thing is that it is not easy to get into the play, and it will not cause depression. So, Marin changed to teach Angela the paralysis face. This trick is much easier than pretending to be sad and crying. Angela mastered it after learning it for a few days. Seeing that the time was almost right, Marin began to arrange the fake death thing. At the beginning, it was natural to convene several major legion commanders for a secret discussion. This action would dispatch troops and horses to confront people, and it would definitely require several legions, especially the cooperation of the 4 local legions. It must be made clear to several legion commanders. Therefore, this time, Marin summoned the commanders of the 4 local legions to Auric for a secret discussion. As for Sakara and Sivag, who were far away in England, Marin sent them a secret letter, letting them know what was going on and not to panic. Soon, Stade, Wagner, Steindorf, and Hinks, the 4 local legion commanders, returned to Auric, and then went into the house where Marin was hiding with Schwartz under the pretext of going to Kohler's house for a drink and met Marin. Originally, Schwartz was the commander of the 1st Legion, and Stade was the commander of the 2nd Legion. But before the opportunity to attack the Principality of Guedes, Marin simply removed Schwartz and transferred Stade to be the commander of the 1st Legion. And Schwartz's arrangement is the future chief of staff. Of course, the general staff of the North Sea Kingdom has not yet been established. And Wagner, who was originally the deputy commander of the 3rd Legion, is actually more capable than Steindorf. But because Steindorf was an old man under Marin's command, and Wagner was also a wandering knight from outside, he had been suppressed. But as Wagner brought his father and elder brother, who were knights, to the North Sea Kingdom, he cut off his other retreats and completely dispelled Marin's doubts, and finally appointed him as the commander of the 2nd Legion. Marin told them straight away that he was going to pretend to be dead, and told them that if the news spread, some people in the army might be shaken, and hoped that they would pay attention to the movements of their officers, especially those wandering knight officers whose families were not in the North Sea. Marin even believed that foreign princes might try to attack the North Sea Kingdom by taking advantage of the situation. Therefore, Marin asked several legion commanders to be prepared for war, and once the war broke out, they should quickly prepare for war. At the same time, in order to facilitate the monitoring of officers who might have problems, Marin also asked Steindorf and Hinks to allow Kohler to temporarily place a group of spies in 2 legions far away from Auric in the name of transfer to prevent officers from rebelling. Several people naturally nodded in agreement. After all, Marin was not really dead, but faked his death, so there was no need for them to make a fuss. Moreover, with the military strength of the North Sea Kingdom, there is almost no opponent in the Holy Roman Empire in a one-on-one fight. As long as Marin is alive, the North Sea Kingdom will be extremely safe. Only a fool would go to someone else to follow such a powerful prince. Moreover, if the 2 legions in England were also transferred back, even if the princes of the Holy Roman Empire formed a coalition, they might not be able to defeat the North Sea Kingdom. In fact, for now, the only thing Marin is worried about is that France and the princes of the Holy Roman Empire will join forces. In that case, Marin can't bear it. Because France is too strong, it is equivalent to the combined strength of the princes of the Holy Roman Empire who are against Marin. If France can join forces with the princes, Marin is equivalent to facing 2 alliances of princes, and naturally he is a little unconfident. Therefore, this time Marin only intends to move those guys who dare to reach out, and is not ready for a full-scale war. Chapter 12:22, The Thoughts of the Princes. It was not only the Elector of Saxony Frederick III who was happy to learn of Marin's death. Charles II, the former Duke of Guedes, who had been demoted to the Earl of Golden and only had the territory of Upper Guedes, was even happier. After all, Frederick III only lost a small part of his land, while the Duchy of Guedes not only lost most of its land, but also lost his title, so he naturally hated Marin even more. Therefore, after learning of Marin's death, Charles II, the former Duke of Guedes, ordered a big banquet in a national celebration. Of course, he didn't say directly that he was celebrating Marin's death, otherwise he would be taught a lesson. Joachim I, the Elector of Brandenburg, was also very happy. After all, he was very painful to cede the Stendal area. As for King Hans of Denmark, his mood was a bit contradictory. He was beaten by Marin's army and abandoned the Jutland Peninsula, the Duchy of Holstein and the Duchy of Schleswig, so he naturally wished that Marin would die. However, Denmark is currently in a difficult situation and is still in a standoff with Sweden. At present, Denmark, which is in financial difficulties, still hopes that Marin will purchase timber produced in the southern forests of Norway and Sweden. Therefore, King Hans's idea is that Marin will die, but the North Sea countries should not stop purchasing timber from Denmark. In short, the princes and kings who were defeated by Marin at the beginning all celebrated Marin's death. On the contrary, Marin's allies are more uncomfortable. Maximilian I is more uncomfortable, because without such a strong ally as Marin, he is also a little alone, and some can't beat the alliance of princes in France. Originally, the Habsburg family faced the alliance of princes in Germany and the powerful France alone. Later, with the rise of Marin, the alliance of princes did not dare to confront the Habsburg family head-on. Because the powerful Marin was watching covetously on the side. With Marin to contain the alliance of princes, the Habsburg family had the confidence to confront the French in Switzerland. Now that Marin is dead, the princes' alliance has lost its restraint. Will it join forces with France to force the Habsburg family to withdraw from Switzerland? Maximilian I was right. As the boss and the most important brain of the princes' alliance, Frederick III, the Elector of Saxony, was really considering forcing the Habsburg family to give up Switzerland. Why? Because Switzerland is too important. Of course, what is important about Switzerland is not its broken land. To be honest, most of this broken place in Switzerland is mountains, deep in the interior of Europe, a standard poor mountain and bad water. If it weren't for the watchmaking and financial industries in later generations, Switzerland would really be nothing special. At least, in this era dominated by agriculture, Switzerland is a standard poor mountain valley. However, the mountain people in Switzerland are fierce. Although there are only 740,000 people, there may be tens of thousands of mercenaries pulled out to fight. Once the Habsburg family completes the occupation and digestion of Switzerland, it will be equivalent to sending tens of thousands of war soldiers to the Habsburg family. At that time, the Habsburg family will have no problem fighting all the German princes alone. Even if the German princes' alliance unites with France, I'm afraid they can only defend themselves. After all, the strength of Swiss mercenaries is not a joke. Therefore, the German princes are absolutely unwilling to see the Habsburg family successfully annex Switzerland. However, in the past, the princes had no confidence to unite with the French to confront the Habsburg family. Now, Marin's sudden accident made Frederick III realize that this is a very good opportunity to deal with the Habsburg family. As for the North Sea Kingdom, Frederick III believed that after losing the sinister and cunning, evil commander, Marin, the tens of thousands of troops of the North Sea Kingdom would inevitably be demoralized and unwilling to fight. At that time, just wait for the North Sea Kingdom to decline and collapse. Then, after cleaning up the Habsburg family, it would be just right to deal with the North Sea Kingdom. Marin did not expect that his painstaking fake death would actually make the Princes' Alliance come up with the idea of cleaning up the emperor. Anyway, Maximilian I was unlucky. But it's not that no one is paying attention to the North Sea Kingdom. For example, the Duke of a powerful principality close to the North Sea summoned a knight in a secret room. Tell me, Menzel, has your brother got the secret of the high agricultural yield of the North Sea? The knight, who was half kneeling on the ground, shook his head and said, Your Excellency Duke, not yet. My brother is not valued in the North Sea army and doesn't know much. He only knows that the secret of the high agricultural yield of the North Sea lies in fertilizer. And all fertilizers come from a place called fertilizer processing plant. Even during the spring plowing and fertilizing every year, the people who are responsible for fertilizing the land allocated to my brother are also serfs sent by the fertilizer processing plant, and the serfs in my brother's manor are not allowed to have contact. Then your brother didn't find out anything? The Duke's face looked ugly. That's not the case. My younger brother has found out that there are 3 types of fertilizers. But we need to mix them into the fertilizer processing plant to find out what they are. Before, the fertilizer processing plant was heavily guarded, and my brother didn't find a chance. However, recently there was news that the Grand Duke Marin of the North Sea was killed. I estimate that the North Sea Kingdom will be in chaos for a while. After all, Marin's son Caesar is still very young. Taking advantage of this chaos, my brother should have a chance to get useful information from the fertilizer processing plant. What if we can't get it? The Duke's face was gloomy. If it really doesn't work, Your Excellency can take advantage of the civil unrest in Beihai to send a team of elite cavalry to raid one of the fertilizer processing plants and seize the fertilizer secrets. The Duke hesitated and said, It's better not to. Beihai's troops are still there, and there are 30,000 to 40,000 troops on the mainland. We can only muster more than 10,000 people at most, which is no match for them. Your Excellency can contact more princes to put pressure on Beihai. Stupid. If you unite with other princes, you must share this secret with them. By then, others will also know this agricultural secret, and the price of grain will plummet. Only if we keep it to ourselves can we get the greatest benefit. The Duke roared angrily. Yes, I didn't think it through. Listen carefully, if this task is completed, you and your brother can both be awarded hereditary barons and have corresponding fiefs. If I unite with other princes to rob, your credit will be gone. Yes, I understand. The half-kneeling knight hurriedly said. The Duke didn't know that if he united with other princes to seize it, he might still have a chance. He wanted to take it all for himself, but it brought him great trouble. In addition to this powerful Duke, Count Charles of Golden was also plotting to seize this secret. As a person who had once allied with Marin, Count Charles of Golden knew that the North Sea Kingdom could afford tens of thousands of troops, and must have a special way to make money. Therefore, after being defeated and demoted, Charlie reflected deeply and decided to learn from Marin in order to make a comeback. In his opinion, Marin was able to grow from a mere Baron of Texel to a big man who controlled the huge Grand Duchy of the North Sea. There must be some secrets. First of all, it is certain that he is strong militarily. For this reason, the current Count Charles of Golden has begun to imitate the military system of the North Sea Kingdom, reorganize the army, and start recruiting mercenaries. However, the financial level of the Golden State, which has lost the Lower Guides region, cannot support tens of thousands of troops. Therefore, Count Charles is currently trying every means to find out the secret of Marin's wealth. He has heard about the high agricultural yield of the North Sea State and has begun to win over several unsatisfactory lower-level officers of the North Sea State. But like a certain duke, Count Charles also wanted to keep the secret for himself, which laid the seeds for their later liquidation. Chapter 1223 The Great Purge Plan. Of course, it was not just these 2 princes who sought the secret of the high grain yield of the North Sea Kingdom, there were others. It was mainly leaked by some wandering knight officers of the North Sea Kingdom when they returned to their hometown to visit their relatives. Most of them were unintentional, but their fathers and brothers took it to heart. After all, if they get this method, their families can also become prosperous. If they present it to their respective monarchs, a hereditary baron will not escape. Although Marin repeatedly issued orders to strictly prohibit leaking secrets, some wandering knights were greedy for wine. Some people talked nonsense when they were drunk and accidentally leaked secrets. For example, the unlucky company captain who was caught by Kohler's spies while spying on the fertilizer processing plant leaked the secret in this way. Then, under the coercion of his father and brother, he began to inquire about the secrets of fertilizers. Marin was immediately full of black lines, and then he gritted his teeth and squeezed out a sentence from his teeth: thoroughly investigate all wandering knight officers, and all those who have the problem of talking nonsense after being drunk will be examined. It is better to kill them by mistake than to let them go. Marin knew that people are different when they are drunk. For example, Marin himself likes to sleep soundly after being drunk, such as falling headfirst under the table, but not talking much. Some people get drunk and go crazy, smashing things randomly, which is the legendary drunken madness. Such people are very harmful to society, but Marin doesn't care because they don't leak secrets. There are also those who like to sing and cry, but Marin doesn't care. What really makes Marin care is those who like to brag after being drunk. These people will accidentally leak some secrets by bragging after being drunk. Therefore, Marin asked Saul to cooperate with Kohler to jointly investigate the officers who were born as wandering knights in the army. All those wandering knights who like to brag after being drunk and who return to their hometowns to visit relatives frequently will be included in the investigation list. Of course, Marin gave them a chance. If the secrets were leaked unintentionally and they did not inquire about the secrets afterwards, Marin planned to let them persuade the father and brother who knew the secrets to move to Bahai Kingdom with their families. Otherwise, they would be silenced. Anyone who tries to find out the secrets of fertilizers will be put to death. Marin, the father and brother who know the news, will also send someone to assassinate them. Whoever knows will die. As for those who deliberately leak secrets while awake, let alone, they will be killed without mercy. Even the nobles of the enemy countries who contacted him will die, even if they are princes. Go, select a group of spies who are proficient in assassination and escape. This time, I will kill them. Marin ordered Kohler. Then, he turned around and ordered Schwartz: tell those officers who were born as wandering knights, either bring their families to the North Sea Kingdom, or cut off contact with them. Schwartz was stunned. Will this not be good? You know, there are many officers who were born as wandering knights in the army. If they don't cooperate collectively, we don't have officers to replace them. Have you forgotten the people in my junior officers crash course? As early as 7 or 8 years ago, in order to solve the problem of insufficient number of officers, Marin founded a 200-person junior officers crash course. Now, 7 or 8 years have passed, and these kids have graduated long ago and are in their 20s. However, because Marin was quick later, he recruited a group of wandering knights from outside, resulting in few positions in the army. These 200 young officers will have a hard time getting ahead. What's more, this crash course is not one session, but 3 sessions, with a total of 600 people. At present, most of them have no place to be arranged, so they have to be arranged to hang out in the militia camp first. Although these people are inexperienced, they have solid basic skills. They are definitely not good at being middle and senior generals, but they can replace some middle and lower level officers. According to Saul's intelligence, it seems that there are no middle and senior generals who want to defect to other countries. After all, the middle and senior generals live very well in the North Sea Kingdom, and Marin gives enough land and high income. Basically, the income of the middle and senior generals in the North Sea Kingdom is too much to spend. Because the output of their manors is very high. Unlike the nobles of other vassal states, most of them are in fiscal deficit. Therefore, only fools want to change jobs. Only those middle and lower level officers who are not doing well will want to change jobs. Because the little land they got could not bring them a very rich life. Moreover, their titles were not high, and they had not even gotten them through military exploits. Therefore, they would have the idea of seeking a better job. So, this time, Marin planned to use fake death to clean up the army to avoid trouble in the future. He still overestimated the integrity of some people, thinking that people from knight families were honest. But in fact, when other princes offered conditions such as barons, there were still wandering knights who succumbed. After all, the baron's territory was large enough, his status was high enough, and it could be passed down. Fortunately, Marin had kept a hand and set up a fertilizer processing plant that hid the secret, so that the secret of the fertilizer was not spread everywhere. Otherwise, it is estimated that all of Europe would know it at this time. Therefore, the middle and lower level officers who wanted to betray now, although they knew the magic of fertilizer, did not know the composition of fertilizer. The 400 veterans who had seen Marin use manure and fish bone powder in the early Qing dynasty, because they were born as civilians and their families moved to the North Sea Kingdom, had no idea of betrayal. Moreover, other princes never thought of winning over those veterans. Because the European princes who stick to tradition look down on those veterans who come from civilians. Even if they win over, they will choose to win over those wandering knights from aristocratic families, so as not to lower their status. But in this way, it narrows the scope of reconnaissance for Marin. Because there are only 1,500 wandering knights in the North Sea Kingdom, and 1,000 of them are in the Lancers. But the Lancers are stationed in Auric, with tight defense and difficult to contact. Therefore, Marin only needs to check the other 500 people, and focus on the 3rd Corps stationed in Schleswig and the 6th Corps stationed in the Ruhr area. In this way, it saves a lot of trouble. Even if half of the 500 people are purged, Marin still has 300 to 400 graduates of the youth officers' crash course to arrange, so he is not afraid of having no one in his hands. Although those who have been purged must have better practical experience than those young kids in the youth officers' crash course. However, even if a person with 2 minds is experienced, Marin still has to guard against them stabbing him in the back on the battlefield. Just like in the Battle of Feshue, the surrendered General Zhu Su shouted, "The Qin army is defeated," behind the former Qin army, which shook the morale of the former Qin army, causing the retreat to turn into a rout, and causing the former Qin army, which had an absolute advantage in numbers, to be defeated. With such an example in front, Marin had to guard against it. Therefore, Marin would rather replace those capable but two-minded wandering knight officers with officers from the youth crash course who are less capable but loyal enough. Although the combat effectiveness will decrease, it will not cause problems on its own. Besides, their lack of experience can also be trained and exercised through combat. Of course, Marin did not give those officers who came from wandering knights a chance if they could bring their fathers, brothers and other relatives to the North Sea Kingdom, or cut off contact with them, they could continue to be reused. Only those who are half-hearted will be purged. But after learning from this incident, Marin will no longer easily recruit foreign wandering knights. Unless the other party can bring all their families to the North Sea Kingdom. Moreover, as the teenagers in the school run by Marin gradually grow up, Marin does not have to worry about the problem of talent replenishment. Chapter 1224, Confusion of Right and Wrong in Declaration of War. In central Switzerland, the tug-of-war between the Habsburg army and the Swiss resistance supported by France is still going on. Moreover, the Habsburg army led by Frundsberg still has a slight advantage. Because the Siena Bank jointly opened by the Marin and Medici families provided loans to the emperor, so that the Habsburgs had enough military funds to wage war in Switzerland. However, the Swiss resistance was not a pushover. Because King Louis XII of France would never allow the Habsburgs to annex Switzerland, he did his best to support the Swiss resistance and did not hesitate to send a large number of French elite troops to change into Swiss mercenaries' clothes to fight against the Habsburgs, which made the war situation in Switzerland more tense. But the problem is that it is not convenient for the French to directly send excellent generals to command the Swiss resistance. The leaders of the Swiss resistance are mostly mercenary leaders from mountain people, a bit like the boss of a community, and lack military literacy. Therefore, despite the full support of France, the Swiss resistance is still slightly at a disadvantage. After all, Frundsberg is a famous general, and his training method comes from Marin, a time traveler. In this way, the Habsburg family can still have the upper hand even with average financial resources. Specifically, the commander of the Habsburg family army is very strong, and the training methods are sophisticated, but the quality of the soldiers themselves is relatively average, while on the Swiss resistance side, because France provided a large number of elite soldiers, the situation is that the soldiers are very strong, but the commander is a group of mercenary leaders similar to the boss of a society, and he has no ability. Therefore, this battle is very difficult for France. Because France lost too many elite soldiers on the Swiss battlefield. But the Habsburg family is not afraid. Because Frundsberg inherited the tactical guiding ideology from Marin, which is to rely on the whole, not on the individual ability of the soldiers. Therefore, in this kind of tug-of-war and war of attrition, the Habsburg family will not feel sorry even if they lose a large number of soldiers. At most, they will recruit more. But France is very distressed, because they are all elite veterans of France. For the more classical French army, elite veterans of hundreds of battles are very valuable. In fact, Louis XII was not a fool. He had long invited the German princes who were against the Habsburg family to come to help in order to force the Habsburg family to cease fire. However, the German princes who were against the Habsburg family were not stupid either. In the case of an uncertain future, they were unwilling to rashly send troops. Besides, there was a powerful North Sea country on the side, which made them hesitant. Originally, the 2 years when Marin came to open up the mainland were a great opportunity to resolve the battle for Switzerland. However, these princes were not united and argued with France. At the same time, some people were worried that the North Sea kingdom would mantis stalk cicadas while the Oriole was behind, so they were always hesitant. Then, time was delayed and waited until now. It was not until the good news that Marin was probably dead came that some hesitant German princes breathed a sigh of relief and planned to deal with Maximilian I and the Habsburg family together. Because the North Sea kingdom will definitely have a period of chaos after losing Marin. It is most appropriate to send troops at this time. For this reason, Frederick III, the Elector of Saxony, made a secret trip to Paris and had a secret meeting with Louis XII. When Louis XII learned that the German princes were willing to help him deal with the attack of the Habsburg family, he was overjoyed. For this reason, he generously expressed his willingness to bear part of the military expenses of the princes' coalition. This expenditure seems to be very large, but for France, it can save more by not continuing to fight a war of attrition with the Habsburg family. However, as princes of the Holy Roman Empire, Frederick III and his men did not have sufficient reasons to challenge the emperor directly. They can't say, "Your Majesty, you can't expand your territory, right?" This is morally untenable. Because Switzerland was indeed once a fiefdom of the Habsburg family. How to force the Habsburg family to withdraw? The German princes who opposed the Habsburg family were also somewhat at a loss. They gathered secretly for a meeting to discuss countermeasures. After a long discussion, Duke Anthony of Lorraine suddenly said, "I do have an idea. It just so happens that our Duchy of Lorraine has had some territorial disputes with our neighbor, the County of Baden. The County of Baden belongs to the Swabian League and is on the side of the Habsburg family. We might as well take this opportunity to form a coalition force and invade the territory of the County of Baden, especially the southern part of the County of Baden." As he said, Duke Anthony of Lorraine took out a map and pointed to everyone. "Please look, the southernmost tip of the County of Baden is close to the northern Swiss city of Basel. We can take the opportunity of attacking the County of Baden to form an army of tens of thousands and enter the southern part of the County of Baden and station near the Swiss border. In this way, His Majesty the Emperor will definitely be frightened. After all, he has less than 20,000 troops in Switzerland. At that time, we will have more choices. We can choose to pick a fight with the Habsburg army on the border, or we can mediate by force and force the Habsburg family to sign an armistice agreement to maintain the status quo in Switzerland. Besides, the County of Baden is considered a vassal of the Habsburg family. If we invade the County of Baden, the Habsburg family will have to respond. If we can fight with them, that would be the best." After listening to Duke Anthony's words, everyone fell into deep thought. This is a good idea. After a while, Frederick III slammed the table and thought that Duke Anthony's method was very good. Because, as Duke Anthony said, the County of Baden is close to Basel in Switzerland. If the vassal army approaches, the Habsburg family will have to respond. In fact, the County of Baden is on the side of the Habsburg family. As an emperor, Maximilian I had to express his opinion that my younger brother was beaten up. Moreover, the Duchy of Lorraine is close to France, and it is very convenient to obtain sufficient supplies from France. Louis XII promised to provide a large amount of food and weapons, which can be transported to the front line through the Duchy of Lorraine. And the various vassal states only need to send their troops to the Duchy of Lorraine and bring some food and supplies. Of course, before sending troops, they also had to build momentum in advance. So, while the various principalities were gathering their troops, a diplomatic conspiracy against the County of Baden also began to unfold. In fact, this border conflict was first provoked by the Duchy of Lorraine in order to seize the ownership of a border town called in the County of Baden, and it was the party that was looking for trouble. However, in order to find an excuse to send troops, Frederick III joined forces with a group of German princes who were against the Habsburg family, and turned black and white, insisting that the weak County of Baden snatched the town of that originally belonged to the Duchy of Lorraine, and urged the County of Baden to return the town of to the Duchy of Lorraine as soon as possible. Faced with such a black and white accusation, Count Christopher I of Baden was furious and replied directly, "Let your daughter's dog pee go." Then, because of this angry remark, the alliance of princes directly declared war. Chapter 1225, He who wears the crown must bear its weight. It's announced now. Marin, who received the intelligence, was stunned. Well, it's announced now. Kohler nodded. It's too hasty. Marin was speechless for a moment. This is the 16th century, not the completely shameless 18th century. In the 18th century, the European powers could change teammates during the 7 Years' War, because Europeans had thrown their sense of honor into the garbage dump and thoroughly pursued interest diplomacy. But now, honor is still very popular in Europe, and the face has not been thrown into the trash can yet. This kind of shameless diplomatic method seems to be something that only a traverser from the future like Marin can do, right? Marin actually didn't know that the reason why Frederick III and others became shameless was actually because they learned from Marin. The princes saw that Marin was so shameless and got so many benefits, so they were naturally jealous. Therefore, in order to achieve the strategic goal of curbing the Habsburg family this time, they did not hesitate to lose all their moral integrity. After all, the princes were more afraid of the Habsburg family than Marin. Why? No matter how strong Marin is, he is of a low birth, and he can't make a big wave in Europe, where bloodline is important. But the Habsburg family is different. After Maximilian I became emperor, in theory, he had the right to unify the entire Holy Roman Empire. The premise is that the strength is enough to crush the princes. Maximilian I already occupied the righteous position and was crowned as a formal emperor. Then, this means that as long as the Habsburg family has enough strength, they can send troops to unify the entire Holy Roman Empire. And if Switzerland is occupied, then the Habsburg family will be equivalent to getting a stable and very powerful source of troops. At that time, the Habsburg family may really have a chance to unify Germany. Therefore, although the military strength of the Habsburg family is actually weaker, the princes of the Holy Roman Empire are most afraid of the Habsburg family who occupy the throne. In this case, even if Marin seemed to be in trouble, the princes still planned to move the Habsburg family first, rather than the North Sea Kingdom, which seemed to be declining. Who cares? Let's ignore them first. Let's deal with the troubles at home first. Marin put down the information with a headache. In fact, Marin really didn't care about outsiders' affairs now, because his baby son Caesar was in trouble. Of course, Caesar himself was in good health and had not encountered any bloody disasters, but he was greatly stimulated mentally. After learning that his father might never come back, Caesar, who was only 10 years old, collapsed suddenly. The young Caesar buried his head in Angela's arms and cried all day, his eyes were swollen, and he even cried and shouted, "I want my dad," in his dreams. Angela was very anxious, wondering whether to tell Caesar the truth that his father was still alive. But this was rejected by Marin. After all, children don't have a door in their mouths. If you accidentally let it slip, all your previous efforts will be wasted. However, seeing the child crying like this, Marin was also very anxious. If he cried his eyes out, wouldn't Marin be heartbroken? After thinking about it, Marin decided to use other things to divert Caesar's attention so that he wouldn't be too sad. So, Marin called Schwartz, Hayter and others over and arranged for them to help enlighten Caesar. At the same time, he encouraged him to be strong. That afternoon, Schwartz asked to see Caesar alone. "Uncle Schwartz, will my father come back?" Caesar asked sadly with red and swollen eyes. "Young master, please rest assured. The Grand Duke is a disciple of the great sage. He has great luck and will definitely not have any problems. I think he should be back in a few months." Schwartz was telling the truth. Marin originally planned to come out after hiding for a few months. In fact, in the middle of the night, Marin secretly went to see Caesar several times through the tunnel. However, Caesar was asleep at that time and didn't know. But I heard that the sea is very dangerous. It is basically difficult to come back if something happens. Caesar said uneasily. "That's someone else. The Grand Duke will definitely not be so unlucky. I'm afraid." Caesar wanted to cry again. "Young master, you must not cry. Let's not talk about whether the Grand Duke will come back or not. Even if he doesn't come back, you must not cry. You are a little man, the only heir of the Grand Duke. Without the Grand Duke, you are the only hope of the North Sea Kingdom. You must not cry like a little girl. For a little man, bravely taking on the burden is the most appropriate behavior." Schwartz failed to comfort him, so he provoked him. "Bravely take on the burden?" Caesar thought about it in confusion and did not nod immediately. Because he was indeed a little confused. What should I do? Little Caesar, who was only 10 years old, fell into deep thought. "You are studying now, right? And learning Chinese at the same time?" Little Caesar nodded. But Schwartz frowned and said, "This is not enough. As the successor to a Grand Duke, it is not enough to learn these. You also have to learn military tactics, as well as knowledge in various aspects such as law and administrative management." After a pause, Schwartz continued, "So, your afternoon play time will be temporarily cancelled in the future. You need to use this time to learn military command from me, and sometimes you have to go to Hayter to learn law and administrative management. Then I will have no free time at all." Little Caesar, who was still a child, was a little dumbfounded. "If you wear the crown, you must bear its weight. This is what Marin once said to Schwartz, and now Schwartz is using it to educate little Caesar. If you want to wear the crown, you must bear its weight. If you want to wear the crown, you must bear its weight. If you want to wear the crown, you must bear its weight. Caesar repeated this many times and fell into deep thought. Until dark, the 10-year-old Caesar woke up again, looking at Schwartz with a concerned face and said, "Uncle Schwartz, starting tomorrow, I will start learning the art of war with you, and at the same time learn law and administration with Uncle Hader." "Ah. Will it be too hard?" At this time, Schwartz was a little worried. Before, Schwartz planned to make such an arrangement to distract the sad Caesar's attention and give him no time to be sad. But when he saw Caesar calm down, Schwartz didn't want Caesar to work so hard. Because he clearly felt that Caesar had calmed down. In this way, there is no need to find too many things to distract Caesar's attention. But Caesar shook his head and said, "If you want to wear the crown, you must bear its weight. My father once told me this, but unfortunately I was still young and didn't understand the meaning of this sentence. Now, I understand." After a pause, Caesar continued, "I am my father's only legitimate son, and I will definitely inherit the North Sea Kingdom in the future. So, from today on, I can no longer play with my brother Robert and the others like a child. From today on, I will take on the responsibility of the North Sea Kingdom. And first of all, what I have to do is to learn military affairs from you, Uncle Schwartz, and learn law and administration from Uncle Hader. Only in this way can I grow up quickly and take over the burden of the North Sea Kingdom as soon as possible." At this point, the young Caesar's face was full of determination. From the next day, Caesar began to hold a golden crown that Marin had worn every day, and asked someone to make it smaller and wear it on his head, and began his journey of studying from morning to night. And on that crown, Caesar also engraved the words, "If you want to wear the crown, you must bear its weight," by hand. Chapter 12:26 Edward's Plan. Hearing what Caesar had done these days, Marin was also stunned. What is this? Is his son going to rise? Marin felt that this was very similar to the bloody plot in the novel. Something happened to his parents, and then the heir changed his temperament, worked hard, and finally became a great leader, a proper protagonist template. Marin suddenly felt that the biggest gain of his fake death this time was not that he could deal with his opponents, but that Caesar exploded. If it were in the Eastern feudal dynasty, the emperor might still be suspicious of the prince, such as Emperor Wu of Han and Emperor Taizong of Tang. Because the prince is likely to have killed the emperor for the throne. But in Europe, there has been basically no phenomenon of patricide. Because the prince is not worried about being taken away by his brothers. After all, Europe is a system of primogeniture, which is unshakable. For example, Richard I, the son of King Henry II of England, once rose up against his father, but was eventually forgiven. Moreover, although there is a struggle for power between fathers and sons in the European royal family, killing each other generally does not happen. Unless one party does something unbearable. Of course, this is also due to the difficulty of having children for the European royal family. After all, Europe practices monogamy, and whether the wife can give birth is a problem. Even if she can give birth, she can only give birth to a few children at most, and they may not all be boys. Even if they are all boys, with the medical level in ancient Europe, there is a great possibility that they will die. Even if 7 or 8 children are born, they may all die. For example, Queen Anne gave birth to 18 children, all of whom died. Therefore, the kings are very concerned about their offspring and will not easily move their sons. Unlike China, because the emperor can marry many women, and the sons born have the right of inheritance. Therefore, the emperor of China does not care about killing a few sons. Anyway, there are a lot of people waiting in line to take the throne. In this context, Marin is not worried that Caesar will have any bad ideas. Even if Caesar wants power, Marin is willing to give it, so that he can be more relaxed. You know, as a soul of a loser, Marin is not so diligent. If it weren't for the fact that people of this era can't keep up with him in thinking, he wouldn't have to do many things himself. If Caesar could rise up and have the ability to take over earlier, he would be happy to see it happen. He even planned to retire early if he had the chance, and then travel around the world. So, in this case, although he felt sorry for Caesar, Marin still hoped that his son could grow up soon. And, during the months when he pretended to be dead, he would not tell his son the truth. In this way, after a few months, when Caesar adapted to this state, he would make rapid progress in the future. If he told him the truth too early, maybe Caesar would slack off and lose his fighting spirit. Angela, you comfort Caesar well these days and don't let him have too much mental pressure. Angela nodded, and Marin said again, you go to Da Vinci and let him be Caesar's math teacher. He will study science in the future. It is not enough to learn military, law and administrative management. He must have a sufficient mathematical foundation. But Mr. Da Vinci is teaching those college preparatory students, and he is usually very busy. Are there people who have studied college preparatory? Marin was a little surprised, but he reacted quickly. I have been away from China for more than 2 years, and the group of junior high school students should have graduated. Moreover, unlike the universities in the future, Marin has moved a lot of high school physics and chemistry knowledge into the university textbooks. There is nothing he can do about it, because, strictly speaking, there are only 2 people who know the high school physics and chemistry knowledge now, Marin and Da Vinci. If the junior high school students also learn that knowledge, there will not be enough teachers to teach them. But it is different in the university. There are few college students, and Da Vinci can barely cope with it alone. Moreover, college students are the top among the junior high school students, and it is easy for them to learn that knowledge. So as not to waste Da Vinci's time by teaching some people with poor talents. After all, he is the only physics and chemistry teacher, and he is too busy to teach. And Marin is a monarch and has no time to teach. Besides, Marin does not know the physics and chemistry knowledge in the universities in the future. After all, he is a history major. At most, he knows some advanced mathematics, which is somewhat related to science. Moreover, with the current level of productivity, it is more than enough to include the high school physics and chemistry knowledge in the previous life into the university curriculum. As for the university preparatory class, it was because Marin felt that the children who had just graduated from junior high school were too young, so he let them wait 2 years before going to university. At the same time, during these 2 years of preparatory classes, the school will divide the students into arts and sciences according to their personal hobbies and talents. Then, determine their respective majors. During these 2 years of preparatory classes, Da Vinci will personally teach these preparatory students mathematics and art. Then, he will deliberately teach some insensitive physical and chemical knowledge during teaching. Then, see who has great interest and high talent. After that, select them for key training. Of course, Da Vinci is not only good at physics, chemistry and art, he is also a master of anatomy, a master of architecture and a master of mechanical design. Therefore, once the group of preparatory students from Beihai Kingdom officially enter the university, Da Vinci may be even busier. While he is not particularly busy now, he is just right to teach Caesar mathematics. Although it seems a bit of a waste of talent, for Marin, a parent, it is just right for Da Vinci to teach elementary school mathematics to Caesar. His son should be taught by the best teacher. In the following days, Marin secretly let the army actively prepare for war while secretly paying attention to Caesar's growth. During this period, Adler and Simon wanted to go back to Auric, but they were stopped. Of course, Adler and Simon didn't have any bad ideas. They just heard that their brother was in trouble and wanted to come back to comfort their parents. After all, these 2 people are short of ideas, but they don't have any bad intentions. Especially Adler and his wife, they are representatives of strength without brains, and the knights have a strong sense of honor, so it is difficult to have any dark thoughts. However, they don't know that if they go back at this critical moment, there will be problems. If Marin's men have ulterior motives, it is right for them to go back. After all, it is important to maintain family rule. But Marin's men are old brothers who have fought together. They are stable internally and don't need Adler and Simon to go back to maintain stability. Even because Caesar is still young and Edward V's incident happened not many years ago, their return is the biggest instability. Fortunately, Lady Mary is clear-headed and severely stopped them from returning to Auric. Otherwise, something will definitely happen. But there was news from England that the current King Edward of England seemed a little restless. After the news of Marin's accident reached England, King Edward VI of England was very sad at first. After all, he had lost a powerful ally. However, after being sad, Edward VI suddenly thought that if Marin died, the North Sea army would definitely be unstable. He didn't care about the several legions in the North Sea. However, aren't the 4th and 5th legions stationed in England and Scotland temporarily without a master? Obviously, our little Caesar was gorgeously ignored by him. Edward's plan was to take advantage of Marin's accident, and Caesar had not grown up yet, and the 4th and 5th legions would definitely be leaderless at this time. If I take advantage of this great opportunity to win over, will these 20,000 powerful troops become my own direct lineage? Then, Edward directly sent people to contact Saqqara and Sivag, intending to win over the 2 legion commanders so that the 4th and 5th legions would join him and become his direct lineage troops. Chapter 12:27 Plotting to abolish the Magna Carta. Damn, this guy wants to poach my people. Marin was shocked. Moreover, Edward's hand is very big. He actually wants to poach 2 legions under his command at once and wants to take them away as a whole. This appetite is a bit too big. It seems that I am too polite to you. Marin thought with a gloomy face. Fortunately, he had secretly sent people to inform Sakara and Sivag. Otherwise, if the two mistakenly thought that Marin was really in trouble, they might really be shaken. After all, if Marin really had an accident, it would be difficult for the North Sea Kingdom to have influence on the British Isles for several years. Because, before Caesar came of age, the first task of the North Sea Kingdom was to protect itself. In this case, the 4th Legion and the 5th Legion were half abandoned in England and Scotland. If I didn't know that Marin was still alive, Edward might really succeed in poaching people. Once Edward succeeds in poaching people, the foundation that Marin has worked hard to build in England and Scotland will be instantly eaten by Edward, including the powerful 4th Legion and the 5th Legion with a total of 20,000 troops. 3-1. If a son was born, Princess Margaret would be sold by him as a bargaining chip for marriage without hesitation. But he didn't know that he didn't have this opportunity. Moreover, his idea angered Marin. Mud paralysis, dare to cancel my son's marriage? Do you want to die so much? It seems that I have to find a way to kill you as soon as possible, so as not to cause trouble. Alas. Wait, dead father, being broken off. This seems to be another routine of the protagonist template. Should Caesar really be broken off? Maybe it can accelerate growth. Marin finally shook his head and rejected this weird idea. Because, if the marriage is really broken off, then the idea of uniting England will go bankrupt. It is not impossible to conquer England violently, but in the future, he will face the dilemma of fighting on two fronts. After all, without legal support, rashly annexing England will definitely resist endlessly in the future. I still have to fight in Germany, and England is the rear area, so I can't mess it up. Moreover, Edward was just an idea. Besides, he has been kicked ass, and he can't have a son even if he wants to. That idea is just an idea after all. Marin suddenly remembered that it seems that England has a Magna Carta, which has great restrictions on the monarch. In particular, the recognition of the freedom of self-made cities is what Marin dislikes the most. These self-made cities are just like a country within a country, and are not subject to the official jurisdiction of the royal power. In Marin's view, this is really splitting. As a traverser with a Chinese soul, the idea of great unification has long been deeply engraved in his soul. He would rather slaughter all the citizens of the autonomous city than tolerate city autonomy. In fact, the later independence of North America was deeply influenced by this idea of autonomy. He didn't want his son to be tied up when he ruled England in the future. So, he began to plan to abolish the Magna Carta. It happened that after Edward's massacre, the nobles in England who could currently confront the king were at their weakest. If the abolition of the Magna Carta was proposed at this time, the resistance would be the smallest. Moreover, Edward had enough blood debts. As the saying goes, too many lice don't feel itchy. Marin planned to encourage Edward to abolish the Magna Carta after this incident. After all, the emergence of the Magna Carta was a shame for the king. And if he was willing to fully support him, there was no reason for him not to do it. When Edward had done all these offending things, Marin could think of a way to let him take a complete rest. Thinking of this, Marin called Collar and ordered, "You go and arrange spies to secretly spread the news in England, saying that the king wants to abolish the Magna Carta." After thinking about it, Marin added, "After spreading this false news, you arrange someone to notify the remnants of the Tudor dynasty in France." Collar was a little stunned when he heard it. "Master, what do you mean? I told you not to call me master, I'm 33. Have you ever seen a 33-year-old master?" "Okay, master." "Then, what do you call the master?" "Old master." Marin felt a little weird after hearing it, but he also thought it was good. So he nodded, "Well, that's a good name. Old Hoffman doesn't care about things anyway, he's mainly unemployed at home, which fits the character of old man. So what do you mean by letting me notify the remnants of the Tudor dynasty? You've also seen the intelligence. Edward has been dishonest recently and wants to annex my army. So, let's find him something to do to give him a headache. Notifying the remnants of the Tudor dynasty naturally means that we hope they can contribute and add fuel to the fire, giving Edward more headaches." But Marin changed the subject and said, "However, I hope Edward really abolishes the Magna Carta. In this way, when Caesar unifies England, he will not be bound by his hands. So, you send someone to notify Sakara and Sivag, let them be ambiguous about Edward's recruitment, but make it clear that they support the abolition of the Magna Carta and say that it is a shame for the king." Kohler thought for a while and finally reacted, "Master. No, master, what you mean is, use public opinion to stir up this topic first, and then let the two legion commanders deliberately express their support for abolishing the Magna Carta. In this way, His Majesty Edward will be tempted and will really abolish the Magna Carta." Marin nodded, "This is just the first step. When I show up in a few months, I will personally express my willingness to send troops to support him in abolishing the Magna Carta. In this way, I am not afraid that he will not be tempted. Kohler thought about it, it was true. If Marin fully supported it, Edward would have enough confidence to abolish the Magna Carta. Moreover, for a king, the Magna Carta is really not a good thing. At the beginning, the reason why John I accepted the Magna Carta was because Britain had just paid a ransom of 150,000 marks of silver to the Holy Roman Emperor Henry VI because of the capture of Richard I. This money was collected by the whole of Britain, which drained the British treasury and also aroused the anger of the British. Richard I even went to France to rob in person to collect the ransom and died in the process of robbery. After John I succeeded to the throne, the royal family owed a lot of debts and had no ability to confront the aristocracy, so they had to sign a humiliating treaty. But after John I gained a foothold, he tore up the Magna Carta. But when Henry III succeeded to the throne, because Henry III was a young lord who succeeded to the throne at the age of 9, he was bullied by the nobles together, and then the Magna Carta was restored. In short, the Magna Carta is the product of the king's submission to the nobles, and no king is really willing to accept it. In particular, the Magna Carta separated the judicial power and deprived the king of the right to pronounce a verdict. Although this seems very progressive to later generations, it was unique in England in the 16th century and was a shame for the king. Because, in this way, even if the king hates someone to death, if there is no verdict from the court controlled by the nobles, the king can't do anything about his enemy and it is not easy to put him in prison. Such a king is indeed a coward. Today, because of the Civil War, the aristocracy has been bloodbathed and its strength has fallen to a low point. If Marin Lincoln sent troops to help, Edward would definitely be able to successfully tear up the Magna Carta. Therefore, Marin is not worried that Edward will not take the bait. Of course, Marin does not care about the right to judicial judgment. He only cares about the autonomy of autonomous cities, which is the source of the idea of division in the colonies. Therefore, Marin would rather not have the right to judicial judgment than to completely erase the right to local autonomy. Of course, he will run a large colonial empire in the future, and this idea of autonomy is the most taboo. If the people in the colonies want self-government, then the colonial empire is useless. Therefore, the Magna Carta must be abolished. Chapter 1228, The Future Shogun. Some people may think that the Magna Carta is the source of British progressive thought, which can promote the development of the British economy, bring more tax revenue, and enhance national strength. This statement is not wrong after hundreds of years, and it is indeed true. However, in this era, the Magna Carta is not the driving force for British progress, but a huge obstacle to Britain's strength. Because the Magna Carta of this era does not protect the interests of the bourgeoisie, let alone the interests of the common people, but only the interests of the aristocracy. As for increasing taxes, don't be funny, the nobles don't pay taxes. In fact, the only function of the Magna Carta of this era is to prevent the stupid king from committing suicide, rather than promoting the development of Britain. But the problem is that the nobles of this era are as stupid as the king, and they suppress and exploit the bourgeoisie and the common people in the same way. Therefore, it is absolutely nonsense to say that the Magna Carta of this era is a progressive thing. The Magna Carta will only become a boost to social development after the bourgeoisie enters the political stage and is modified. In this era when the king and the nobles are as stupid as pigs, the Magna Carta, which represents the interests of the aristocracy, is simply an obstacle to social development. Of course, the Magna Carta of this era is not useless. For example, he restricted the king from imposing taxes without restraint, which is probably the only positive effect of the Magna Carta of this period. As for the right of citizens to self-government, it may be good for those citizens, but it is absolutely a disaster for a regime that wants to establish a colonial empire. The loss of the 13 colonies of North America by Britain has an important relationship with the excessive decentralization of this autonomy. The North American colonies themselves were established by a group of exiles and Puritans. Both of these people loved to rebel. Coupled with the autonomy granted by the Magna Carta, Britain eventually lost its rich North American colonies. Fortunately, during this period, only England had such a thing, and the monarchical centralized system was still popular on the European continent. Therefore, as long as Marin eliminated the Magna Carta in England, Europe would not have it. But Marin can be sure that in order to abolish the Magna Carta, England will be full of corpses again. The last time Edward seized the throne, most of the people killed were great nobles. And this time, the butcher's knife will be aimed at those small nobles and the citizen class. In fact, Marin is not worried about those small nobles. Because, as nobles, although a little stupid, but also clever. Facing the powerful army of the North Sea Kingdom, those nobles have to bow their heads. Unless, they are tired of living. However, the citizens of those autonomous cities may not be so aware of the current situation. And many revolutions in Europe were made by the citizens. The most representative of them is the French Revolution, which was all made by the citizens and had nothing to do with the peasants. Because these citizens are relatively simple-minded, and they are not lacking in courage, stupid and bold, and they are easily impulsive when instigated by people with ulterior motives. Therefore, Marin can be sure that this time when the Magna Carta is abolished, he may have to stain his hands with the blood of a lot of English citizens. But fortunately, England was still an agricultural country in this era, and citizens only accounted for a minority of the population. Therefore, there is no need to kill too many people. Cities in this era are basically pocket-sized, especially European cities. For example, a capital city like Vienna has only 20,000 people. Milan, with a population of more than 100,000, can already be regarded as a top European city. As for London, there are about 50,000 people. Unlike later generations, any medium-sized city has 200,000 to 300,000 people, and the population of large cities exceeds 1 million. The main force of the citizen class is craftsmen and ordinary workers, but England's wool textile industry started late. It was not until the time of Henry VII that England began to restrict wool exports and engage in its own textile industry. And Henry VII died a few years ago, so there should not be many urban residents in England during this period, and even fewer autonomous cities. Therefore, Marin does not have to kill too many people. In addition, if there are too many people who resist, Marin also plans to change his strategy: only kill a small number of people who make a lot of noise, and the rest will be punished to be serfs in the manor. Then, let the disciples of Bishop Taylor, the big liar, brainwash them every day. Those who dare to resist the court are actually simple-minded, and smart people generally don't easily show up to die. Therefore, it is easy to brainwash these people. If it doesn't work, use the means of pyramid selling in later generations, lock them in a small room, let Taylor's disciples teach them to do actions and shout slogans every day, and they must be washed into their own diehards. There are no revolutionaries who have read a lot of books these days. Generally, those who take up arms to rebel are simple-minded fools. Because, in this era, the illiteracy rate in Europe was extremely high. Those who were educated were all nobles, and the citizens could not afford to go to school. For such fools and bold people, MLM methods are absolutely easy to deal with them. You know, many college students in later generations have been brainwashed by MLM. I don't believe that these fools and bold people can't be washed. Thinking of the MLM that many communities in later generations are strictly investigating, Marin laughed. It seems that there is no need to kill too many people this time. Then, Marin arranged Kohler to notify Bishop Taylor to prepare a group of talented Frisian apprentice priests to learn brainwashing from Marin. When the new round of war in England is over, these missionaries who can speak Frisian, can communicate in English, will take the captured English citizens to shout slogans and do actions every day. If they are not brainwashed, they will never be released. So, Marin began to retreat and concentrate on creating, recalling, the slogans and actions commonly used by MLM in later generations, preparing to use them to teach those apprentices of the big liar Taylor so that they can do things for themselves. Just as Marin was sitting quietly in the secret room creating brainwashing magic, Kohler suddenly came over. What's the matter? Marin was a little unhappy about being interrupted. Master, no, master, the oriental woman named Shwizi you brought back seems to be pregnant. Now her belly is bulging. The accompanying Ming Dynasty doctor took her pulse and said that she is already 4 or 5 months pregnant. What? She's pregnant now? Marin was a little stunned. You know, he and Angela have been married for many years, and currently they only have one son, Caesar. And Ganfu Shwizi was just Marin's way of passing the time on the ship on his way back to China. As a result, she was pregnant. It seems that I have to let the Chinese medicine doctor take Angela's pulse. Why have I only given birth to one child in so many years? Marin was right. Angela did have some problems with her body. Of course, it's not a big problem, just some uterine cold. And uterine cold is a very common problem for women. For example, many girls who like to eat ice cream in later generations are prone to this problem. Angela also likes to eat ice cream, and she even made an ice cellar to make ice cream for herself. She also likes to put ice cubes in wine, so she has some uterine cold. But the problem of uterine cold may not seem serious, but it affects fertility. Fortunately, Marin brought back the Chinese medicine and many Chinese medicines from the Ming Dynasty. Later, he supplemented Angela's body, which solved this problem, and then reopened the fertility code. Of course, Angela's matter is a matter for later. Marin's heart is very complicated about Ganfu Shwizi's pregnancy. Originally, Marin didn't regard Ganfu Shuizi as his woman at all, at most as a dispensable. But is pregnant. Well, it can't be someone else's. Women in this era are not as chaotic as in later generations. So, Marin admitted it. Moreover, Marin has already thought of a future way out for his illegitimate son. If it's a boy, I'll be a shogun in the future. Marin said casually. Chapter 1229 The Name of Greatness. Shogun? Kohler was a little confused and didn't understand what Marin was talking about. The actual controller of Japan. Kohler nodded, and then asked, what if it's a girl? Then marry. Marin originally wanted to marry Emperor Tanichi as a queen, but then he thought it was wrong. If the Japanese emperor became his son-in-law, he would be embarrassed to make a move. Moreover, he had long planned to choose a black girl as the queen for the future Japanese emperor. Therefore, then be a female lord. Then, Marin ordered, send someone to tell Ganfu Mizuko that if a boy is born, I will support him to be the shogun in the future. As for the boy's name, Marin thought for a while and said, there are 3 names in total. The German name is Hitler Hoffman, the Chinese name is Ma Yongjin, and the Japanese name. Let's call him Ganfu Nobunaga. If another time traveler knew the 3 names of this unborn child, he would probably faint directly. Nima, each name is so powerful. First of all, there is no need to mention the name of the little mustache, that is a world-class demon king, and Ma Yongjin, although less famous, is also the #1 brother in Shanghai. Especially the version of Ma Yongjin by He Jujin, he is so handsome, and the name Nobunaga is needless to say, that is a legend of the Japanese warring states period. Originally, Marin wanted to steal the name of Oda Nobunaga. Anyway, Oda Nobunaga was not born yet. Even Oda Nobunaga's father, Oda Nobuhide, was only a 2-year-old baby. Unfortunately, Ganfu Mizuko's surname is Ganfu, and the Oda family is a big family in Japan after all, so it's not good to use someone else's surname. So, she can only be called Ganfu Nobunaga. Of course, this is a boy's name. If a girl is born, Marin has also thought about it, and she will be called Ganfu Haruko. This is the name of the heroine of Slam Dunk. She was the goddess in his mind when he was in elementary and junior high school, and she was worthy of his possible daughter. In this way, Kohler sent someone to pass this news to Ganfu Mizuko, who was hiding in William Naval Port to raise a baby. When she learned that Marin planned to support her possible son to be the shogun, Ganfu Mizuko cried with joy. Moreover, Marin was willing to use Ganfu as his son's Japanese surname, which made Ganfu Mizuko excited and almost moved the fetus. You know, as a branch of the Ganfu family, the Kushira Castle Ganfu family is going to be extinct because it has only Ganfu Mizuko as a daughter. And if this son adopts Ganfu as his surname, it means that the Kushira Castle Ganfu family has been continued. This is very rare in Japan, where men are superior to women. Because, in Japan, men have strong self-esteem. Except for very poor men, most men are unwilling to marry into the family. Even after a woman gets married, she has to take her husband's surname. Therefore, Ganfu Mizuko was very excited about this. But Ganfu Mizuko didn't know that Marin didn't value this child at all, so he agreed to use the surname Ganfu. Moreover, even if he supported this son to become the shogun, Iwami Silver Mine, Kagoshima Gold Mine and Sado Island Gold Mine would definitely be controlled by himself, and would not be controlled by this cheap son. Of course, even so, this son is considered to have earned it. After all, Japan is a big country, and being able to become the shogun of such a big country is absolutely enviable to all men in Japan. And the reason why Marin planned to make himself and Ganfu Mizuko's son the shogun was that he was afraid that his direct rule would lead to fierce resistance from the Japanese people. After all, seriously speaking, Marin is an authentic outsider and the foreign devil in the eyes of the Japanese. If he conquered directly by force, there would definitely be constant resistance in the future. Therefore, using the surname of Ganfu to show that they are one of their own can also reduce the resistance of the Japanese. After all, Ganfu is a Japanese noble, and it is easier for the Japanese to accept it. After Toyotomi Hideyoshi, who was born as a commoner, came to power, but because of his low birth, he did not dare to call himself shogun, but only Kenpaku or Taiko. The Ganfu clan originated from the super-powerful Yamato clan who controlled the military of the Japanese court during the Sui and Tang dynasties, and was of noble birth. No one would question his appointment as the shogun. Then, Marin would not be so eye-catching if he intervened in Japanese affairs as the father of the shogun. Then, Marin would teach this son to feed Emperor Tanichi some sterilization medicine or something, so that Emperor Tanichi would be extinct, and maybe he would have a chance to be the Emperor of Japan. Or, simply, he would green Emperor Tanichi, become the queen, and let his grandson become the Emperor of Japan. In fact, Marin may not be the first to think and do this. Because, in the long history of Japan, there was indeed an incident where the shogun killed the queen. Therefore, Japan's self-proclaimed unity of all generations is inaccurate. But it is unknown which generation the problem lies in. After all, those chaotic shoguns would not talk nonsense everywhere to keep the throne for their own bloodline. Otherwise, they would definitely be overthrown. Similarly, later news said that the DNA of the British royal family did not match that of Richard III. Obviously, the British royal family has also been green for hundreds of years and changed its bloodline. But this kind of thing is not easy to check, because doing such things is top secret and telling it out is a death. Marin was also afraid that his descendants would encounter this situation. Therefore, he learned the methods of the Qing dynasty, introduced the Jing Shifeng system and eunuchs, and strictly supervised to prevent the bloodline from being polluted. Speaking of it, although the Qing dynasty treated the people harshly, its ability and means to control the court and descendants were indeed very powerful. Otherwise, the Qing dynasty, where the people had such a hard time, could not last for 275 years, and it was 2 years away from catching up with the Ming dynasty. The Yuan dynasty, which was also a foreign regime and had insufficient means, only lasted 98 years. Coincidentally, Japan's largest gold mine in Kagoshima, the Hishikari gold mine, is located in Hishikari County, north of Osumi province, and is controlled by the Hishikari clan. When Nobunaga Kanazawa grows up, Marin can send troops to Osumi province in the name of helping Kanazawa Mizuko and Kanazawa Nobunaga to recapture Kashira Castle, first control the Kanazawa clan, and then attack the Hishikari County in the north to seize the Hishikari gold mine. In fact, the total gold reserves of the Hishikari gold mine are not large, only 200 or 300 tons. This also includes the old gold mine above the real Hishikari gold mine. The reason why Marin cares about this gold mine is because of the super high grade of the Hishikari gold mine. The so-called grade is the gold content. Generally speaking, gold mines with a content of more than 2 grams per ton can be mined profitably. The higher the grade, the greater the profit. Generally speaking, many gold mines, such as the famous Laizhou gold mine in later China, have a grade of only 4.45 grams per ton, which means that 1 ton of ore can extract 4.45 grams of gold. Of course, this grade is more than double the profitable grade of 2 grams per ton, which is considered a very cost-effective gold mine. The Hishikari gold mine is a bit scary, with a grade of 40 grams per ton, which is 20 times the profitable grade. What does this mean? This means that with the same amount of labor, you can harvest 20 times more gold with a profitable grade. And this is extremely important in ancient times when productivity was underdeveloped. Generally speaking, a large gold mine can produce 1 or 2 tons of gold per year, which is considered good, and this is still under the condition of investing a lot of manpower and material resources. The grade of the Hishikari gold mine is more than 10 times that of an ordinary gold mine. Then, with the same investment of manpower and material resources, the annual output of gold is estimated to reach 20 to 30 tons. Cast into gold coins, it is 5.61 million to 8.42 million gold coins. This super high yield is what Marin values very much. Chapter 12:30 Bonds Intelligence. In fact, South Africa has even greater gold reserves. The total gold reserves in the Rand gold mining area alone are about 53,000 tons. However, the gold grade there is not low, but it is not high either. To mine out so much gold, it requires a lot of manpower and material resources. But the problem is that South Africa is now a barren land. The Rand gold mine is deep in the inland area. Even if Marin colonizes South Africa, he must first build a stronghold on the coast of South Africa, such as the Cape of Good Hope, and then send troops deep inland to find gold mines, which is very troublesome. Even if the gold mine is found, not to mention that other European countries will be jealous and scramble for it, the investment of manpower and material resources alone is very troublesome. Needless to say, materials must be transported from the mainland. Manpower is also the same. Mines require a lot of manpower to mine. And protecting gold requires a large number of troops. Otherwise, the mined gold is also easy to be robbed. In later generations, Marin has watched many movies such as The Great Gold Robbery. That corner of South Africa is inland and it is easy to be robbed. Moreover, in this era, an important method for refining gold and silver ores was called mercury mixing method. It is to mix mercury, water and gold and silver ores together and grind them finely, so that the mercury wets the surface of the metal particles and further diffuses into the metal to form amalgam, mercury alloy, thereby separating from the ore minerals. After that, the amalgam is heated to evaporate the mercury, and the precious metal or its alloy is obtained. This method is mainly used to process the ores of the 2 precious metals of gold and silver, because the price of mercury is also very high. If it is used to process cheaper metals, it will lose money. If you want to mine gold in South Africa, you will definitely consume a lot of mercury. Generally speaking, it must be shipped from Europe. But if you purchase a large amount of mercury from Europe, it will definitely attract the attention of various countries, and it will be difficult to keep it secret. Originally in history, Spain was able to mine gold and silver in large quantities after occupying the Americas, which was also closely related to its status as a major mercury producer. Because Spain itself is one of the top mercury producers in Europe, and there is no need to ask for help. If Marin wants mercury, he has to purchase a large amount of mercury from European countries and regions such as Spain and Italy, which is not cost-effective and easy to be exposed. Moreover, although Marin knew that the cyanidation method was more commonly used in later generations, he only knew a little about chemistry and did not know how to produce cyanide. Therefore, he could only continue to use the mercury amalgamation method to produce gold and silver. Of course, in this era, China and Japan are actually major producers of mercury. For example, Ise province in Japan is rich in mercury. As for China, it's very funny. Because Taoism requires a lot of alchemy, the output of mercury is also very large and can be easily bought. Marin originally planned to purchase mercury from China and Japan, and then transport it to South Africa to mine gold. However, later I thought, isn't Hishikari gold mine in Osumi province? Iwami silver mine is also in western Japan, and they are all very close. Instead of transporting mercury thousands of miles to South Africa and America to mine gold and silver, it is better to mine it locally in Japan. Moreover, there is another great advantage in mining gold and silver in Japan. That is, Japan's human resources are very rich. Japan currently has a population of 17 million, second only to Ming Dynasty in India, ranking third in the world, and 2 million more than France. With such a large population, labor is naturally worthless. Moreover, Japan has a large grain output, and there is no shortage of food sources in the mines, which is convenient for miners to live. Not only that, the peasant class in Japan is more obedient and easier to manage than Chinese peasants. In this way, mining gold and silver in Japan nearby can be solved nearby, whether from the perspective of manpower or material resources, with low cost and convenient for mining gold and silver. In addition, the taste of the Hishikari gold mine is so high, let alone. At that time, Marin plans to drive tens of thousands of Japanese farmers and craftsmen to mine the Hishikari gold mine and Iwami silver mine. I don't believe that enough gold and silver can be mined. Just when Marin was planning to mine the Hishikari gold mine and Iwami silver mine on a large scale in the future in the secret room, urgent intelligence suddenly came from Wittenberg. It turned out that James Bond, who was aliased as Calvin, that is, the previous ace spy Jim, Marin specially changed his name for him, had been lurking around Martin Luther, influencing Martin Luther, so as to prompt him to think about religious reform faster. Under the instigation of James Bond, Martin Luther really came up with the idea of religious reform earlier than in history. Of course, it is still in its infancy and has not yet taken shape. However, Martin Luther has now emerged in Wittenberg, the capital of the Electorate of Saxony, and has won the attention of Frederick III, the Elector of Saxony. Today, Martin Luther, who is only 29 years old, has become a famous doctor of theology in Wittenberg and has been announced by the abbot of Wittenberg, Staupitz, as the next abbot of the monastery, with a prominent status. Frederick III also values Martin Luther, a young junior in the religious world, and often invites him to the royal palace in Wittenberg to discuss theology. As a close friend of Martin Luther, James Bond often follows Martin Luther in and out of the court. It should be pointed out that Frederick III, the Elector of Saxony, is not an ordinary secular prince, but a secular prince served by a monk. In other words, Frederick III is actually a monk, but he served as the Elector of Saxony because of his brother's lack of ability. Moreover, his younger brother was also his heir. Therefore, Frederick III was very interested in theology, but he was disgusted with the tyranny of the Roman Catholic Church. Therefore, he gradually became a supporter of the Reformation. It just so happened that Martin Luther's thoughts included the Reformation and opposition to the tyranny of the Roman Catholic Church. Therefore, Martin Luther was favored by Frederick III and invited him to the palace many times to discuss theology. And this intelligence was discovered by James Bond when he followed Martin Luther into the palace to discuss theology with Frederick III. Because, the sharp-eyed Bond found that a Swiss military map was posted on the wall of the living room of Frederick III's palace. This aroused his great interest. So, taking advantage of the opportunity that Frederick III invited him, Martin Luther and Dean Staupitz to dinner, Bond suddenly flashed into Frederick III's study under the pretext of going to the toilet and saw a document on the table. It was Frederick III's plan to secretly contact the princes of various countries to attack the county of Baden and take the opportunity to enter Switzerland to intervene in the Swiss war. After getting the information, Bond left immediately. That night, he contacted the North Sea Intelligence Station in Wittenberg and sent the information back. Marin was also surprised when he received the information, because he didn't expect those princes to deal with the emperor instead of him. Before, he also received news that the princes threatened the county of Baden, and he thought that the princes were trying to support the Duke of Lorraine. Unexpectedly, their ultimate goal was the Habsburg family army in Switzerland. It seems that this result is not bad. Marin was unwilling to let the emperor be too powerful. If the Habsburg family loses again, it seems good. However, Marin quickly reacted: if the emperor was crippled this time, then the arrogance of these princes would be even more arrogant. Perhaps, with their high morale, they would think of looking for trouble with themselves. Therefore, this time the emperor can suffer losses, but he cannot lose. The best case scenario is that both sides will suffer losses. Chapter 1231. France is also sending troops. Speaking of which, South Africa has larger gold reserves. The total gold reserves in the Rand gold mining area alone are about 53,000 tons. However, although the grade of gold there is not low, it is not high either. If you want to mine so much gold, you need to invest a lot of manpower and material resources. But the problem is that South Africa is now a barren land. The Rand gold mine is deep in the inland area. Even if Marin colonizes South Africa, he must first build a stronghold on the coast of South Africa, and then send troops deep inland to find gold mines, which is very troublesome. Even if the gold mine is found, not to mention that other European countries will be jealous and scramble for it, the investment of manpower and material resources alone is very troublesome. Needless to say, materials must be transported from the mainland. Manpower is also the same. Mines require a lot of manpower to mine. And protecting gold requires a large number of troops. Otherwise, the mined gold is also easy to be robbed. In later generations, Marin has watched many movies such as The Great Gold Robbery. South Africa is inland and is prone to looting. Moreover, in this era, an important method for refining gold and silver ores is called mercury amalgamation. It is to mix mercury, water and gold and silver ores together and grind them finely, so that the mercury wets the surface of the metal particles and further diffuses into the metal to form amalgam, thereby separating from the ore minerals. After that, the amalgam is heated to evaporate the mercury, and the precious metal or its alloy is obtained. This method is mainly used to process the ores of the two precious metals of gold and silver, because the price of mercury is also very high. If it is used to process cheaper metals, it will lose money. If you want to mine gold in South Africa, you will definitely consume a lot of mercury. Generally speaking, it must be shipped from mainland Europe. But if you purchase a large amount of mercury from Europe, it will definitely attract the attention of various countries, and it will be difficult to keep it secret. Originally in history, Spain was able to mine gold and silver in large quantities after occupying the Americas, which was also closely related to its status as a major mercury producer. Because Spain itself is one of the top mercury producers in Europe, and there is no need to ask for help. If Marin wanted mercury, he had to purchase a large amount of mercury from European countries and regions such as Spain and Italy, which was not cost-effective and easy to be exposed. Moreover, although Marin knew that the cyanidation method was more commonly used in later generations, he only knew a little about chemistry and did not know how to produce cyanide. Therefore, he could only continue to use the mercury amalgamation method to produce gold and silver. Of course, in this era, China and Japan were actually major mercury producers. For example, Ise province in Japan was rich in mercury. As for China, it was very funny. Because Taoism needed a lot of mercury for alchemy, the output of mercury was also very large and could be easily purchased. Marin originally planned to purchase mercury from China and Japan and then transport it to South Africa to mine gold. However, later on, I thought, isn't Hishikari gold mine in Osumi province? Iwami silver mine is also in western Japan, and they are all very close. Instead of transporting mercury thousands of miles to South Africa and America to mine gold and silver, it is better to mine it locally in Japan. Moreover, there is another great advantage in mining gold and silver in Japan. That is, Japan has very rich human resources. Japan currently has a population of 17 million, second only to Ming Dynasty in India, ranking third in the world, and 2 million more than France. With such a large population, the labor force is naturally worthless. Moreover, Japan has a large grain output, and there is no shortage of food sources in the mines, which is convenient for the miners. Not only that, the peasant class in Japan is more obedient than the Chinese peasants and is easier to manage. In this way, mining gold and silver in Japan nearby can be solved nearby, whether from the perspective of manpower or material resources, with very low costs and very convenient for mining gold and silver. In addition, the grade of Hishikari gold mine is so high, let alone. At that time, Marin plans to drive tens of thousands of Japanese farmers and craftsmen to mine the Hishikari gold mine in Iwami silver mine. I don't believe that enough gold and silver can be mined. Just when Marin was planning to mine the Hishikari gold mine and Iwami silver mine on a large scale in the future in the secret room, urgent intelligence suddenly came from Wittenberg. It turned out that James Bond, who was aliased as Calvin, had been lurking around Martin Luther, influencing Martin Luther so as to prompt him to think of religious reform more quickly. Under the instigation of James Bond, Martin Luther really had the idea of religious reform earlier than in history. Of course, it is still in its infancy and has not yet taken shape. However, Martin Luther has now emerged in Wittenberg, the capital of the Electorate of Saxony, and has won the attention of Frederick III, the Elector of Saxony. Today, Martin Luther, who is only 29 years old, has become a famous doctor of theology in Wittenberg and has been announced by the abbot of Wittenberg, Staupitz, as the next abbot of the monastery, with a prominent status. And Frederick III also values Martin Luther, a young junior in the religious world, and often invites him to the royal palace in Wittenberg to discuss theology. As a close friend of Martin Luther, James Bond often followed Martin Luther in and out of the palace. It should be pointed out that Frederick III, the Elector of Saxony, was not an ordinary secular prince, but a secular prince held by a monk. In other words, Frederick III was actually a monk, but he served as the Elector of Saxony because his younger brother was incompetent. Moreover, his younger brother was also his heir. Therefore, Frederick III was very interested in theology, but he was disgusted with the tyranny of the Roman Catholic Church. Therefore, he gradually became a supporter of the Reformation. It happened that Martin Luther's thoughts included religious reform and opposition to the tyranny of the Roman Catholic Church. Therefore, Martin Luther was favored by Frederick III and invited him to the palace many times to discuss theology. And this intelligence was discovered by James Bond when he followed Martin Luther into the palace to discuss theology with Frederick III. Because the sharp-eyed Bond found that a Swiss military map was posted on the wall of the living room of Frederick III's palace. This aroused his great interest. So, taking advantage of the opportunity that Frederick III invited him, Martin Luther and Dean Staupitz to dinner, Bond suddenly flashed into Frederick III's study under the pretext of going to the toilet, and saw a document on the table. It was Frederick III's secret contact with the princes of various countries to send troops to attack the county of Baden, and take the opportunity to enter Switzerland to intervene in the Swiss war. After getting the information, Bond left immediately. That night, he contacted the people at the North Sea Intelligence Station in Wittenberg and sent the information back. Marin was also surprised to receive the information, because he didn't expect those princes to not come to deal with him, but to deal with the emperor. Before, he also received news that the princes threatened the county of Baden, and he thought that the princes were trying to support the Duke of Lorraine. Unexpectedly, their ultimate goal was the Habsburg family army in Switzerland. It seems that this result is not bad. Marin was unwilling to let the emperor be too powerful. If the Habsburg family loses again, it seems not bad. Chapter 1232, Murder of a 3-year-old child. In fact, not only the princes and France were not happy to see the Habsburgs completely control the Swiss region, but even Marin was unwilling to see the Habsburgs control the Swiss region. The reason why Marin let the Habsburgs occupy Switzerland was actually to use the Habsburgs' knife to strangle the Swiss League. Because the Swiss League is a hotbed of anti-emperor or anti-monarch ideas. Historically, the reason why Calvin was able to put forward radical religious reform ideas in Switzerland is inseparable from the local cultural atmosphere. Since the 13th century, some Swiss states have begun to unite to resist the expansion of the Habsburgs in Switzerland. At that time, the Habsburgs occupied most of Switzerland, but some states still refused to accept the rule of the Habsburgs. Then, during the Luxembourg dynasty, in order to preserve the inheritance of the throne, the 3 emperors of the Luxembourg dynasty desperately suppressed their rival Habsburgs, forcing the Habsburgs to abandon Swiss territories including the ancestral Eagle Castle, leaving only Austrian territory. If it weren't for the Habsburg Emperor Frederick III, who later returned to the throne, marrying Maximilian I to Mary, the only daughter of Charles the Bold, who had a large territory in the Duchy of Burgundy, the Habsburg family would not have been able to fight against the princes. But it was precisely because of the annexation of the powerful Duchy of Burgundy through marriage, and the ambition of Maximilian I to unify Germany when he was young, that aroused the vigilance of the German princes and united to embarrass the Habsburg family. If the Habsburg family only had Austria, it is estimated that the princes would not be interested in dealing with the Habsburg family. Because, there is no need. Therefore, the ancient saying, blessings and disasters are dependent on each other, is correct. The Habsburg family became powerful, which aroused the fear of the princes, and then they were targeted. Switzerland is an important chess piece used by the German princes and France to contain the Habsburg family. Because the Habsburg family has never given up the efforts to recover their ancestral land and has continuously used troops in this place. And Switzerland is also a hard bone, very difficult to chew. If the Habsburgs had not been obsessed with Switzerland, but had chosen a weaker persimmon to pinch, the result would probably have been much better. Because Switzerland is a mountainous country, not only are the mountain people fierce, but the Habsburgs' heavy cavalry advantage cannot be brought into play. After all, mountains are conducive to the performance of infantry. Then, the Habsburgs got deeper and deeper into the quagmire of Switzerland. At the same time, because of the century-long battle with the Habsburgs, the Swiss also suffered countless casualties, which made the Swiss people's hatred of the emperor and lords reach a peak. Therefore, later in Switzerland, Calvinism, which was extremely hostile to the monarch, was born. After the advent of Calvinism, it deserved to be the most radical Protestant. In France, Calvinism was called Huguenots, who were the instigators of the French War of Religion and seriously threatened the stability of France. Moreover, the radical ideas of the Huguenots later influenced the French Revolution, leading to the killing of King Louis XVI, the good old man. In fact, Louis XVI just wanted to increase taxes because he supported the independence of the United States with all his strength and exhausted the treasury funds. After all, it takes money to maintain a country as big as France. Then, he was killed by the angry French. Speaking of which, Louis XVI died entirely for the United States, and the United States should have erected a martyr's monument for Louis XVI. But the United States was very weak when it was first founded. In order to befriend the French revolutionary government and seek protection, the United States pretended not to see the unjust death of Louis XVI. Therefore, Louis XVI was obviously the greatest contributor to the independence of the United States, but was deliberately ignored. After Calvinism was introduced to the Netherlands, it developed into a beggar sect, beggar gang, becoming the most important inducement for the Dutch Republic to be independent from the Habsburg family. After it was introduced to Britain, it was also very famous, that is, the famous Puritans. Apart from anything else, Charles I died under the butcher knife of the Puritans. The independence of the 13 states of North America also has a great relationship with the Puritans. If Marin was still a citizen of the Republic in later generations, he would naturally praise the revolutionary nature of Calvinism. But the butt determines the head, and Marin and his descendants will be monarchs. Therefore, Calvinism, who likes to kill kings, is definitely something that Marin does not want to see. Therefore, Marin would rather support the Habsburg family to annex Switzerland than to see the emergence of Calvinism, a professional king killer. But from a rational point of view, it is not a good thing for Marin that the Habsburg family controls Switzerland. Because Marin is also a prince, and he is also afraid that the Habsburg family will unify Germany. Once the Habsburg family really unifies Germany, then Marin's descendants will be reduced from an actual monarch to an empty title. Think about the nobles of the Ming dynasty. They are a group of pigs raised in the capital, only a little better than the princes of the Ming dynasty. But in terms of real power, there is none. The emperor wants to mess with you and has no ability to resist. The most tragic thing is that the princes of the Ming dynasty have to kneel down and salute when facing Lu Jin, the eunuch in power, and they have no face at all. Therefore, Marin never wants the Habsburg family to be too powerful. But because he rose up with the support of Maximilian I, the emperor of the Habsburg family, he had long been labeled as a member of the emperor's faction and was hated by the princes. In desperation, Marin now had to maintain his current embarrassing identity. He was a member of the emperor's faction but not of one mind, and was hostile to the princes at the same time. Anyway, Marin's identity in the Holy Roman Empire is very embarrassing now, belonging to Zhu Beiji looking in the mirror, neither inside nor outside. This time, Marin's secret support for Frundsberg was actually for balance. The prince's coalition army and the Habsburg family army were both defeated, and Marin must be happy. But he didn't expect that if Maximilian I was notified and the Habsburg family was fully prepared, the effect would be better. Because the French will also participate this time. If the Habsburg family is well prepared in advance, it will just let the three parties fight to the point of losing all three. At that time, Marin will be the real fisherman. However, he did not expect that the French would actually send a large number of troops to participate in the war this time. In this way, the balance has long been broken. In short, the Habsburg family is in trouble. But Marin doesn't know that the days of waiting are very boring, and Marin plans to find something to do. For example, change history or something. So, Marin called Kohler and ordered, send a few assassins to Noyon, France, to find a man named John Calvin, and then kill him. Although Calvin founded the radical Calvinism in anti-Habsburg Switzerland, he still doesn't trust Calvin. After all, great men have the ability to change history. Marin is not sure whether Calvin will still establish Calvinism after Switzerland is controlled by the Habsburg family. But as long as there is a bad possibility, Marin plans to strangle the danger. So, Marin decided to let Kohler send someone to kill Calvin. In this way, there is no need to worry about the future. Kohler nodded and asked, "How old is John Calvin? What are his characteristics?" Marin thought about the information he had read in his previous life and said, "Well, this is a 3-year-old child, born in Noyen, that's all." 3-year-old child. Kohler was a little stunned. He has carried out many missions, but it is the first time to find someone to assassinate a 3-year-old child. Will your conscience not hurt to murder a 3-year-old child? Kohler looked at Marin meaningfully. "What are you looking at? Go and carry out the mission. Haven't you seen a child die prematurely?" Marin's old face flushed, and he said angrily. "Understand, I'll send someone to make this child die prematurely." Kohler retreated with an inexplicable look. Chapter 1233 Spring is coming. In fact, not only those princes in France are not happy to see the Habsburg family completely control the Swiss region, but even Marin is unwilling to see the Habsburg family control the Swiss region. The reason why Marin let the Habsburg family occupy Switzerland was actually to borrow the knife of the Habsburg family to strangle the Swiss alliance. Because the Swiss alliance is a hotbed of anti-emperor or anti-monarch ideas. Historically, the reason why Calvin was able to put forward radical religious reform ideas in Switzerland is inseparable from the local cultural atmosphere. Since the 3rd century, some Swiss states have begun to unite to resist the expansion of the Habsburg family in Switzerland. At that time, the Habsburg family occupied most of Switzerland, but some states still refused to accept the rule of the Habsburg family. Then, during the Luxembourg dynasty, in order to preserve the inheritance of the throne, the 3 emperors of the Luxembourg dynasty desperately suppressed their rival Habsburg family, forcing the Habsburg family to give up the Swiss territory including the ancestral Eagle Castle, leaving only the Austrian territory. If it were not for the Habsburg Emperor Frederick III, who later regained the throne, to marry Maximilian I and Mary, the only daughter of Charles the Bold, who had a large territory in the Duchy of Burgundy, the Habsburg family would not even have the strength to fight against the princes. But it was precisely because of the annexation of the powerful Duchy of Burgundy through marriage, and the ambition of Maximilian I to unify Germany when he was young, that aroused the vigilance of the German princes and united to embarrass the Habsburg family. If the Habsburg family only had Austria, it is estimated that the princes would not be interested in dealing with the Habsburg family. Because, there is no need. Therefore, the ancient saying, blessings and disasters are dependent on each other, is correct. The Habsburg family became powerful, which aroused the fear of the princes, and then they were targeted. Switzerland is an important chess piece used by the German princes and France to contain the Habsburg family. Because the Habsburg family has never given up the effort to recover their ancestral land and has been constantly using troops in this place. Switzerland is also a hard bone and very difficult to chew. If the Habsburg family had not been obsessed with Switzerland, but had chosen a weaker persimmon to pinch, the result would probably be much better. Because Switzerland is a mountainous country, not only are the mountain people fierce, but also the heavy cavalry advantages of the Habsburg family cannot be brought into play. After all, mountains are conducive to the performance of infantry. Then, the Habsburg family got deeper and deeper into the quagmire of Switzerland. At the same time, because of the century-long battle with the Habsburg family, the Swiss also suffered countless casualties, which made the Swiss people's hatred of the emperor and lords reach a peak. Therefore, later, Calvinism, which was extremely hostile to the monarch, was born in Switzerland. After the advent of Calvinism, it deserves to be the most radical Protestantism. In France, Calvinism is called Huguenots, the instigator of the French religious war, and a serious threat to the stability of France. Moreover, the radical ideas of the Huguenots later influenced the French Revolution, leading to the killing of the good old King Louis XVI. In fact, Louis XVI wanted to increase taxes only because he had exhausted the treasury funds by supporting the independence of the United States. After all, it takes money to maintain a country as big as France. Then, he was killed by the angry French. Speaking of which, Louis XVI died entirely for the United States, and the United States should have erected a martyr's monument for Louis XVI. But the United States was very weak when it was first founded. In order to make friends with the French revolutionary government in order to obtain protection, the United States pretended not to see the unjust death of Louis XVI. Therefore, Louis XVI was obviously the biggest contributor to the independence of the United States, but was deliberately ignored. After Calvinism was introduced to the Netherlands, it developed into the Beggars sect and became the most important inducement for the Dutch Republic to be independent from the Habsburg family. After it was introduced to Britain, it was also very famous, that is, the famous Puritans. Apart from anything else, Charles I died under the butcher knife of the Puritans. The independence of the 13 states in North America is also closely related to the Puritans. If Marin were still a citizen of the Republic in later generations, he would naturally praise the revolutionary nature of Calvinism. But the butt determines the head, and Marin and his descendants are going to be monarchs. Therefore, Calvinism, who likes to kill kings, is definitely something Marin does not want to see. Therefore, Marin would rather support the Habsburg family to annex Switzerland than to see the emergence of Calvinism, a professional killer of kings. But from a rational point of view, it is not a good thing for Marin that the Habsburg family controls Switzerland. Because Marin is also a prince, and he is also afraid that the Habsburg family will unify Germany. Once the Habsburg family really unifies Germany, then Marin's descendants will be reduced from an actual monarch to an empty title. Think about the nobles of the Ming dynasty. They are a group of pigs raised in the capital, only slightly better than the princes of the Ming dynasty. But in terms of real power, there is none. The emperor wants to mess with you and has no ability to resist. The most tragic thing is that the princes of the Ming dynasty have to kneel down and salute when facing Lu Jin, the eunuch in power, and they have no face at all. Therefore, Marin never wanted the Habsburg family to be too powerful. But because he rose up with the support of Maximilian I, the emperor of the Habsburg family, he had long been labeled as a member of the emperor's faction and was hated by the princes. In desperation, Marin now had to maintain his current embarrassing identity. He was a member of the emperor's faction but not of one mind, and was hostile to the princes at the same time. Anyway, Marin's identity in the Holy Roman Empire is very embarrassing now, belonging to Zhu Beiji looking in the mirror, no one inside or outside. This time, Marin's secret support for Frundsberg was actually for balance. The prince's coalition army and the Habsburg family army were both defeated, and Marin must be happy. But he didn't expect that if Maximilian I was notified and the Habsburg family was fully prepared, the effect would be better. Because the French will also participate this time. If the Habsburg family is well prepared in advance, it will just let the three parties fight to the point of losing all three. At that time, Marin will be the real fisherman. However, he did not expect that the French would actually send a large number of troops to participate in the war this time. In this way, the balance would have been broken long ago. In short, the Habsburg family is in trouble. But Marin didn't know that the days of waiting were very boring, and Marin planned to find something to do. For example, change history or something. So, Marin called Kohler and ordered, "You send a few assassins to Noyon, France, to find a man named John Calvin, and then kill him." Although Calvin founded the radical Calvinism in anti-Habsburg Switzerland, he still didn't trust Calvin. After all, great men have the ability to change history. Marin was not sure whether Calvin would still establish Calvinism after Switzerland was controlled by the Habsburg family. But as long as there is a bad possibility, Marin plans to strangle the danger. Therefore, Marin decided to let Kohler send someone to kill Calvin. In this way, there is no need to worry about the future. Kohler nodded and asked. Chapter 1234, Breeding of Taihu Pigs and Wagyu Beef. Marin told Konfu Mizuko about his plan in detail, and Konfu Mizuko completely believed it. Before, Konfu Mizuko was happy, but she was also a little skeptical, thinking that Marin was bragging. However, when Marin told about the plan to first annex Osumi province, then become the guardian of Osumi province through bribery, and then take the opportunity to annex the entire Shimazu clan, Konfu Mizuko finally realized the feasibility of this plan. So, she decided to try her best to please Marin to prevent Marin from regretting it. However, she was pregnant, and she might be pregnant with the future shogun. So, Gonfu Shuizi winked, and Qin, Qi, Shu, and Hua understood, threw away their samurai swords, and began to take off their clothes. "What are you doing?" "Ah, my dai." Marin pretended to resist, and was pushed down by four beautiful girls who knew martial arts. An hour later, Marin rubbed his old waist and walked out with a weak step, but his face was a drugged expression. "The little girl who practices martial arts is really powerful, my old waist." In Japanese martial arts, judo is a very important component. And the martial arts of female warriors, judo is the main training project. After all, women are naturally not as strong as men, and female warriors pay more attention to judo and skills. Therefore, the waist skills of the four warriors are very deep, and Marin was easily disarmed. However, this process is quite exciting and wild. But Marin also knows that if he is with four warriors with strong waist and abdomen strength all day long, he will definitely not live for more than 3 years. This kind of female warrior with good body flexibility can easily deal with a strong man, let alone four. Fortunately, there were no open-minded feminists in ancient times, and men were not forced to feed them. Otherwise, there would definitely be many men who died in their bellies. Teacher Zhao is not lying to me. Spring is really a season for that. Well, I'll go back today and cut another bullwhip to make up for it. Marin rubbed his waist while spreading in the camp in Port William. In order to keep it secret, Commander-in-Chief of Port William, Scheer, specially built a new camp to the north of the original camp. Moreover, it was separated from the old camp by a fence to prevent the soldiers in the old camp from leaking secrets. In the new camp, Donfu Shuizi and her 4 Wuji lived, as well as hundreds of Marin's guards who were not easy to show up. Of course, in addition to those people, in the new camp, there are also 88 Wagyu cattle brought from the east and 495 Taihu pigs. Originally, Marin brought 100 Wagyu cattle and 540 Taihu pigs. However, during the voyage, some pigs and cattle had difficulty adapting to long-term life on the ship, suffered from severe acclimatization, and died of illness. Therefore, only 88 Wagyu cattle and 495 Taihu pigs arrived at Port William. When Marin passed the place where pigs and cattle were raised, a strange smell came with the wind. Marin frowned, and saw that the cows and pigs in the cowshed and the open pig pen were doing shameful things. Marin was stunned. Teacher Zhao is right, spring is indeed a very suitable mating season. Just now, the smell that Marin smelled was emitted from the boars in the pig pen. Marin was also a country boy in his previous life, so he was naturally familiar with the unpleasant smell of the boars. This is the strange smell that the boars unconsciously emit during the mating season. Of course, there is also this smell at other times, but the smell is the strongest during the mating season. The reason why ancient people did not eat pork at the beginning was related to this smell. Uncastrated boars always carry this smell, and the meat is very unpalatable. The taste of sows is slightly different, but the meat of sows that have given birth is also not delicious, only slightly better than the meat of boars with a bad smell. It was not until people invented the method of castrating fattening pigs that the problem of unpleasant smell was solved. Of course, if the pig is killed before it reaches sexual maturity, there will be no odor. For example, the roast suckling pig popular in the West avoids the problem of bad taste when the pig grows up. Even in later generations, when people eat sheep, they only eat young sheep less than 1 year old to avoid the strong smell of sheep when they grow up. If we use people as an analogy, then the age of the slaughtered sheep is equivalent to a teenager or a young girl, and no one is willing to eat old sheep. To be honest, Marin hates the smell of breeding boars during the mating season. However, he was very happy to see the boars and sows doing shameful things there. Because this means that more piglets will be produced. You know, Taihu pigs can give birth to more than a dozen piglets in 1 litter, which is extremely efficient. Moreover, when Taihu pigs grow up, they are larger than the current domestic pigs in Europe. The native domestic pigs in Europe are currently small and have a low litter rate, with only 5 or 6 piglets per litter, which is very inefficient. In later generations, around the 19th century, Europeans introduced Oriental pig breeds to improve the domestic pig breeds. And now, Marin is doing this hundreds of years in advance. Even Marin does not intend to mix Taihu pigs with native European domestic pigs. Because the mixed breed is not as good as Taihu pigs. However, Marin found out funny on the spot that it seems that many young bulls and boars can't find a suitable path. This is an embarrassing thing that every novice may experience. No wonder, in order to ensure a longer fertility cycle, Marin mostly selects very young cattle and pigs. Many of these cattle and pigs have not experienced mating and don't know anything. This situation has been seen by Marin in later generations. In order to help cattle or pigs successfully mate, many herders and breeders need to help. Yes, you read that right, it is to help with mating. How to help? It's very simple, help push the bird's butt. Animals are different from humans. Humans can get horny at any time, but animals can only get horny in certain seasons, and mating may not be successful. Therefore, in later generations, many breeders choose artificial insemination to ensure the success rate of mating. Moreover, many people don't know that although the penis of a cow looks big, the mating process is very short, and it's good if it can last 2 or 3 minutes. Most of them are weak among humans. Not only cows, the mating time of most animals is very short. Sometimes you can finish it in the blink of an eye. Therefore, many times, the semen of the cow cannot flow into the deep body of the cow in time because the bull shoots too fast. Therefore, many cattle farmers choose to use frozen semen and use syringes and leather tubes to deeply penetrate the cow's body. Anyway, most animals are quick shooters. In order to ensure the success of mating, they have to mate multiple times to ensure the success rate. The exception is dogs, which last a little longer. However, the actual process is not long. However, dogs have a speechless characteristic, that is, dogs are more like to be chained. There is a pubic bone on the female dog, which can easily get stuck on the male dog's thing. Therefore, in spring, you can often see conjoined dogs on the roadside. The male dog's thing is locked by the female dog and cannot be pulled out. And some unscrupulous second-rate people like to beat dogs at this time. Because the two dogs are connected together and cannot run away. The way the female dog locks the male dog and runs away is very funny. Usually the female dog drags the male dog to escape, and the male dog's life is locked, and he is afraid of pain, so he has to jump and run around after the female dog, but the two dogs are dragging each other down and can't run. At this time, you can just pick up a stick and beat them to eat dog meat. It is said that many lustful local male dogs in rural areas died tragically in this way. And another more common way for them to die is to be killed by dog thieves. Most of the dogs that can really die of old age are dogs that are tied at home. Marin stopped thinking and called sure to find professional herders or farmers nearby to help these young Wagyu cattle and Taihu pigs breed correctly. Otherwise, if these newbies were to grope around blindly, who knows how low the success rate would be. Chapter 1235 Cossack Cavalry Corps. So, Ganfu Shuizi winked, and Qin, Qi, Shu, and Hua understood, threw away their samurai swords, and began to take off their clothes. What are you doing? Ah, my dai. Marin pretended to resist, and was pushed down by four beautiful girls who knew martial arts. An hour later, Marin rubbed his old waist and walked out with a weak step, but his face was a drugged expression. The little girl who practices martial arts is really powerful, my old waist. In Japanese martial arts, judo is a very important component. And the martial arts of female warriors, judo is the main training project. After all, women are naturally not as strong as men, and female warriors pay more attention to judo and skills. Therefore, the waist skills of the four warriors are very deep, and Marin was easily disarmed. However, this process is quite exciting and wild. But Marin also knows that if he is with four warriors with strong waist and abdomen strength all day long, he will definitely not live for more than 3 years. This kind of female warrior with good body flexibility can easily deal with a strong man, let alone four. Fortunately, there were no open-minded feminists in ancient times, and men were not forced to feed them. Otherwise, there would definitely be many men who died in their bellies. Teacher Zhao is not lying to me. Spring is really a season for that. Well, I'll go back today and cut another bullwhip to make up for it. Marin rubbed his waist while spreading in the camp in Port William. In order to keep it secret, Commander-in-Chief of Port William, Scheer, specially built a new camp to the north of the original camp. Moreover, it was separated from the old camp by a fence to prevent the soldiers in the old camp from leaking secrets. In the new camp, Ganfu Shuizi and her four Wuji lived, as well as hundreds of Marin's guards who were not easy to show up. Of course, in addition to those people, in the new camp, there are also 88 Wagyu cattle brought from the east and 495 Taihu pigs. Originally, Marin brought 100 Wagyu cattle and 540 Taihu pigs. However, during the voyage, some pigs and cattle had difficulty adapting to long-term life on the ship, suffered from severe acclimatization, and died of illness. Therefore, only 88 Wagyu cattle and 495 Taihu pigs arrived at Port William. When Marin passed the place where pigs and cattle were raised, a strange smell came with the wind. Marin frowned, and saw that the cows and pigs in the cowshed and the open pig pen were doing shameful things. Marin was stunned. Teacher Zhao is right, spring is indeed a very suitable mating season. Just now, the smell that Marin smelled was emitted from the boars in the pig pen. Marin was also a country boy in his previous life, so he was naturally familiar with the unpleasant smell of the boars. This is the strange smell that the boars unconsciously emit during the mating season. Of course, there is also this smell at other times, but the smell is the strongest during the mating season. The reason why ancient people did not eat pork at the beginning was related to this smell. Uncastrated boars always carry this smell, and the meat is very unpalatable. The taste of sows is slightly different, but the meat of sows that have given birth is also not delicious, only slightly better than the meat of boars with a bad smell. It was not until people invented the method of castrating fattening pigs that the problem of unpleasant smell was solved. Of course, if the pig is killed before it reaches sexual maturity, there will be no odor. For example, the roast suckling pig popular in the West avoids the problem of bad taste when the pig grows up. Even in later generations, when people eat sheep, they only eat young sheep less than 1 year old to avoid the strong smell of sheep when they grow up. If we use people as an analogy, then the age of the slaughtered sheep is equivalent to a teenager or a young girl, and no one is willing to eat old sheep. To be honest, Marin hates the smell of breeding boars during the mating season. However, he was very happy to see the boars and sows doing shameful things there. Because this means that more piglets will be produced. You know, Taihu pigs can give birth to more than a dozen piglets in one litter, which is extremely efficient. Moreover, when Taihu pigs grow up, they are larger than the current domestic pigs in Europe. The native domestic pigs in Europe are currently small and have a low litter rate, with only 5 or 6 piglets per litter, which is very inefficient. In later generations, around the 19th century, Europeans introduced Oriental pig breeds to improve the domestic pig breeds. And now, Marin is doing this hundreds of years in advance. Even Marin does not intend to mix Taihu pigs with native European domestic pigs, because the mixed breed is not as good as Taihu pigs. However, Marin found out funny on the spot that it seems that many young bulls and boars can't find a suitable path. This is an embarrassing thing that every novice may experience. No wonder, in order to ensure a longer fertility cycle, Marin mostly selects very young cattle and pigs. Many of these cattle and pigs have not experienced mating and don't know anything. This situation has been seen by Marin in later generations. In order to help cattle or pigs successfully mate, many herders and breeders need to help. Yes, you read that right, it is to help with mating. How to help? It's very simple, help push the bird's butt. Animals are different from humans. Humans can get horny at any time, but animals can only get horny in certain seasons, and mating may not be successful. Therefore, in later generations, many breeders choose artificial insemination to ensure the success rate of mating. Moreover, many people don't know that although the penis of a cow looks big, the mating process is very short, and it's good if it can last 2 or 3 minutes. Most of them are weak among humans. Not only cows, the mating time of most animals is very short. Sometimes you can finish it in the blink of an eye. Therefore, many times, the semen of the cow cannot flow into the deep body of the cow in time because the bull shoots too fast. Therefore, many cattle farmers choose to use frozen semen and use syringes and leather tubes to deeply penetrate the cow's body. Anyway, most animals are quick shooters. In order to ensure the success of mating, they have to mate multiple times to ensure the success rate. The exception is dogs, which last a little longer. However, the actual process is not long. However, dogs have a characteristic that makes people speechless, that is, dogs are more like locks. The female dog has a pubic bone, which can easily get stuck in the male dog's penis. Therefore, in spring, you can often see conjoined dogs on the roadside. The male dog's penis is locked by the female dog and cannot be pulled out. Chapter 1236 I want the mine in the Harz Mountains. However, Marin knew that although he now had 5,000 Cossack cavalry, these 5,000 Cossacks could not fight hard battles for the time being. Because these Cossacks had no experience in fighting hard battles and lacked experience in management. Those authentic Cossacks recruited from the steppes of Eastern Europe were brave but lacked discipline. Moreover, although many of them had combat experience before, most of them were small-scale battles at the level of horse thieves fighting each other. They had no experience in battles involving thousands of people. As for the 1,500 German Cossacks, let alone. Although these people were more obedient and disciplined than the genuine Cossacks, they were not as good as the genuine Cossacks in terms of personal martial arts. Moreover, they had never fought a war and lacked combat experience. Therefore, although the 10 Cossack cavalry regiments were very bluffing, it was still difficult to say about their actual combat effectiveness. Marin was sure that this group of people would have no problem fighting a favorable battle. But it would be hard to say if they encountered an unfavorable battle. Because the biggest feature of the herdsman's army is that they are good at running away. The army on the grassland does not like to fight to the death with others. They usually come to kill when they see an advantage, and immediately hide away when they encounter a hard bone. If you like to fight hard, no grassland nation is the opponent of the farming nation. It is with this almost rogue tactic that the grassland cavalry has firmly restrained the army of the farming nation. Therefore, Marin never expected these Cossack cavalry to help him fight a hard battle. The real life and death battle with the enemy still depends on the regular army composed of German mountain people and farmers. Because these people have no horses and can't run away. Either choose to defeat the enemy or be defeated. As for wanting to escape, the infantry can't escape. As for the Cossacks, it's not useless. For example, Marin plans to let these Cossacks attack the opponent's grain transport team as a cavalry regiment. Facing those second-line transport militiamen, these Cossacks can still easily bully. Originally, Marin planned to let these Cossacks go to America and fight a few battles with the Indian natives to see blood. After all, it is easy for new recruits who have never seen blood to go to the battlefield rashly. Especially the 1,500 German Cossacks, they are all standard new recruits, and basically have no combat experience. It is easy to cause trouble if they are pulled over for a decisive battle rashly. However, with the dispatch of the prince's coalition forces, the curtain of war has been opened, and Marin has no time to train those newcomers. Therefore, we can only rush the ducks to the shelves first. Kohler, go and call Schwartz and Stade, I want to issue an order. Marin has not appeared in public yet, so it is not easy to give orders directly, and he can only give orders through Schwartz and others. Soon, Schwartz and Stade came to the house and entered the secret room to listen to Marin's orders. Under Marin's instructions, Schwartz and Stade, in the name of the representatives of the five-man regent group army, ordered the formation of 10 Cossack cavalry regiments and formed 10 cavalry regiments into a Cossack cavalry corps, and at the same time, Alsace, the commander of the 1st Cossack cavalry regiment, was appointed as the acting corps commander. At the same time, the two also jointly signed an order, ordering the acting commander of the Alsace Corps to immediately summon all 10 cavalry regiments to conduct an overall march and charge exercise across the Jutland Peninsula. In fact, the exercise was just a cover. Once these 10 Cossack cavalry regiments start the exercise, they will not go back. Because the war is about to start. These 10 Cossack cavalry regiments will soon be put into the battlefield. Moreover, it should be pointed out that Marin's strategic goals have also been greatly adjusted this time. Originally, Marin thought that during the period of faking death, a group of vassal states would form a coalition to attack the North Sea Kingdom to take advantage. But through intelligence, Marin knew that those vassal states did not take the lost North Sea Kingdom seriously at all, but went to beat the emperor. Therefore, Marin, who originally planned to confront the vassal coalition, immediately adjusted his plan and planned to only clean up those vassal states that coveted the secrets of the North Sea Kingdom. Moreover, it happened that this time, the vassal states that coveted the secrets of the North Sea Kingdom did not participate in the vassal coalition. Because they planned to take advantage of the chaos of the North Sea Kingdom, losing Marin, and take advantage of the North Sea Kingdom. In this way, Marin only needs to face a few neighboring vassal states. If you don't confront the vassal coalition head-on, the pressure will be much less. Although the results will be much smaller, it is much better than being hostile to most of the vassal states. Moreover, Marin intends to completely cripple these unfriendly neighbors this time and establish his power fiercely. Especially a certain principality on the edge, Marin intends to kill it this time. Of course, the reason why Marin wants to fix a certain principality on the edge this time is not only that the other party covets the secret of the high grain yield of the North Sea Kingdom, but also that Marin covets the other party's resources. It is also an important reason. In addition to its vast area, this principality also has a place that attracts Marin. There are potash mines in the other country. In fact, more than half of the potash produced by Marin's agricultural production comes from the salt mines in the Harz Mountains in this principality. Every year, when Marin transports potash back from the country, he is extorted by the Duke for a large amount of taxes. If Marin had not arranged for his men to do this with hidden identities, and if the potash salt had not been directly shipped to the North Sea Kingdom, the secret of the potash salt might have been known to the other party long ago. Therefore, Marin decided to take advantage of this opportunity to completely cripple the principality. If possible, it would be best to destroy and annex it directly. You know, the Harz Mountains not only have potash salt, but also copper, lead, zinc, silver, and other mineral deposits. Moreover, the reserves of silver mines are not low. The Rammelsburg mine near the famous city of Goslar is a famous lead, zinc, silver, and copper mine in Germany. It was mined from 968 in the Middle Ages to 1988, and about 27 million tons of silver, gold, lead, zinc, and copper were mined. It is said that the famous mathematician Leibniz once worked as a mining engineer in the Harz silver mine. In addition, the highest mountain in the Harz Mountains, the Brocken Mountain, is also very famous. Even the famous lead, zinc and silver mining city of Broken Hill in Australia in later generations, was named after the Brocken Mountain in the Harz Mountains. In fact, the hill in Broken Hill means hill. The reason why Broken Hill in Australia was named the same as Broken Mountain in the Harz Mountains was because Britain at that time was ruled by the Hanoverian royal family, and Broken Mountain in the Harz Mountains happened to belong to the Kingdom of Hanover. Later, after the colonization of Australia, it was probably the lead, zinc and silver mines in Broken Hill that reminded the discoverers at the time of Broken Mountain in the Kingdom of Hanover, which was also rich in lead, zinc and silver, so they took the same name. Of course, the reserves of lead, zinc and silver mines in the Harz Mountains cannot catch up with the Broken Hill mine in Australia, but in Europe, this is also a large mine. After all, this is a mine that can be mined for thousands of years. So, this time, Marin will take the Harz Mountains mineral deposits. Chapter 1237, The War of Money. Marin didn't know how much the silver mine in the Harz Mountains had. However, he knew that Leibniz had served as an engineer at the Harz Mountains silver mine in the late 17th century. The Rammelsburg mine was mined until 1988. Therefore, Marin was sure that the reserves of the Harz Mountain silver mine must be large. Although the exact amount is unknown, the amount is definitely not small. According to the spy report sent by Kohler to the Harz Mountains, the ore produced locally contains about 140 grams of silver per ton. If calculated based on 27 million tons of ore, the total silver reserves are estimated to reach 3,780 tons, which is about 100 million taels of silver. However, this mine has been mined for more than 500 years, and now there are only more than 2,000 tons at most. However, this is also a very terrifying number. In the future, Marin will need a lot of silver to trade and purchase with the Ming dynasty. Therefore, Marin is now in short of silver. Although Marin had long had a plan to capture Japan's Iwami silver mine. But the problem is that it will take several years to really capture Japan. First, he had to send troops to help Konfu Shuizi seize Osumi province and fight against the Shimazu clan. Then, after solving the Shimazu clan, he could free up his hands to seize Iwami silver mine. Moreover, even if Iwami silver mine was seized, it would be necessary to organize manpower for exploration, and then recruit enough manpower and purchase enough equipment to develop Iwami silver mine. Even, it would be necessary to repair the mountain road leading from silver mine to the outside world. This whole set of things would take several years to complete. It would probably be 7 or 8 years before Iwami silver mine really produced a large amount of silver, and it would be too late. The silver mine in Harz Mountain is different. It has been developed here for hundreds of years. It is just limited by technology and scale, and the output has not been increased. But one thing is that the silver mine in Harz Mountain has a complete set of facilities, and the road out of the mountain is not a problem, and Marin does not need to spend time to build those infrastructures. In other words, this mine can continue to produce silver after it is acquired. And if Marin increases investment, the output can be greater. For example, Marin could install a more efficient blast furnace and fully apply the ash blowing method to increase the output of silver. But other countries in Europe did not have more efficient blast furnaces at this time. Marin invested in blast furnaces, which would definitely improve production efficiency and obtain more silver. Then, take it for trade. In fact, before Spain mined gold and silver in the Americas in history, Europe not only had extremely low grain production, but also had a serious shortage of precious metals such as gold and silver. At present, the reason why many European countries desperately mix copper in silver coins is not only to make huge profits from minting inferior coins, but also to have the helplessness of insufficient silver production. It can be said that in this era, Europe is a poor world that lacks both materials and gold and silver for minting coins. If Marin announced the secret of high grain production at this time, the consequence for Europe would be a sharp drop in prices. Because the grain output is high, but the amount of currency is insufficient, the only consequence is a sharp drop in prices. This was the case in the Ming dynasty, when the products of the Ming dynasty were extremely rich, but gold and silver were scarce. Therefore, silver is very valuable, and one tael of silver can buy a lot of things. However, don't think that low prices are a good thing. Because, with low prices, it is very difficult for ordinary people to make money. It is good to earn a few taels of silver a year. Moreover, those who can earn a few taels of silver a year are farmers with land at home. Those tenants are even worse, because most of the income has to be handed over to the landlord, and it is good to have 1 or 2 taels of silver left. Therefore, for society to develop, it not only needs sufficient materials, but also sufficient currency. Only with money and goods, and then promoting the circulation of materials, can society truly prosper. Moreover, Marin learned the text 3 or 5 more bushels in his previous life, which talked about the problem of low grain prices hurting farmers. Therefore, despite the bumper harvest of grain in the North Sea Kingdom, Marin has been deliberately suppressing the sale of grain. Otherwise, the price of grain would have collapsed long ago, which might cause great unrest. Fortunately, he later started a large-scale winemaking business and dealt with the backlog of grain. Otherwise, the nobles in the country would definitely be dissatisfied. In short, governing a country is not that simple. Not only do you have to worry about increasing grain production, but you also have to pay attention to issuing enough currency. Otherwise, economic development will definitely be restricted. Of course, in later generations, this is not a problem. Because later generations use paper money, which has no cost. Officials of various countries are eager to issue paper money indiscriminately, and they are not worried about not having enough money at all, but only worrying about not having enough goods. But in this era, because the anti-counterfeiting technology is not mature, paper money cannot be messed with. Otherwise, counterfeit money will be everywhere. Or, like the Ming dynasty, the treasure notes will become straw paper. In this case, what Marin can do is to increase the output of gold and silver to meet social needs. In addition, it is to promote and issue copper coins to meet the needs of social trade. After all, it is really hard to find small groceries with silver coins. Of course, Marin is worrying about the supply of silver. On the other hand, he is constantly casting fake silver coins made of nickel-white copper to impact the French market. In the 2 years since Marin went to Daming, the Beihai Mint has actually cast 100 million French denier silver coins, worth 833,000 gold coins. After Marin came back, he waved his hand and the 100 million fake denier silver coins made of nickel-white copper were immediately sent to France for large-scale purchases. As for the fake coins, they naturally had to be spent and exchanged for goods. Then, a large number of French livestock, grain, and oak were purchased by Marin's Chamber of Commerce. Needless to say, livestock can be eaten and used for labor. For example, many mules in France were bought by Marin's men with fake silver coins made of nickel-white copper and sent to America for labor. As for food, Marin actually had no shortage of it. However, because the mining and smelting costs of nickel were much lower than those of silver, the cost of using it for coinage was very low. It was used to purchase a large amount of French food. In fact, it was mainly to raise the price of French food and make the French hungry. You know, in ancient times, food production was not high. Once a country was short of food, it would be easy to become unstable. Although Marin's purchase of these grains was not enough to cause unrest in France, it was enough to make the French frightened and afraid of something happening. As for the purchase of French oak, we have to mention Marin's sinister intentions. Marin has always been worried about France's participation in the Great Voyage, because France's manpower and material resources are very strong. Once the French join the game, Marin will be under great pressure. Therefore, Marin has been suppressing France's sailing potential. Before, he had suggested that Edward instruct English merchant ships to pretend to be pirates to plunder the French coast and plunder ships when they are free, and to hit France's sailing potential. But this is not enough. As long as the French have shipbuilding materials, they can build ships. Therefore, Marin specially sent people with nickel-white copper fake silver coins to France to purchase oak for shipbuilding, so that the French will lack shipbuilding materials. Of course, this little money is not enough to make the French lack oak. Therefore, Marin asked his men to use fake silver coins to purchase tall oak logs suitable for keels in France. Especially those tall oaks with a long age are all Marin's targets. As for those short ones, Marin looked down on them. Because, even if that kind of oak is used to build ships, it can't be used to build large ships, and it can't be used as a ship for great voyages. This is probably the first time in human history that currency has been used for such a strategic purpose. After arranging the purchase plan, Marin ordered the North Sea Mint to mint another 500 million nickel-white copper French denier, silver coins. Chapter 1238, Chile produces saltpeter. In fact, while the North Sea Kingdom was minting fake French silver coins made of nickel-white copper, it also issued brass coins domestically. Since 1508, the North Sea Mint has begun to mint zinc brass coins of the same weight, 1.5 grams, as the Finny silver coin, and stipulated that one imperial Finny with a silver content of 50% could be exchanged for 8 brass coins with the golden eagle of the Bullock family and 9 crosses on top. This copper coin, also known as the 9 golden eagles by the people, is the smallest denomination coin in the North Sea Kingdom. Since 1508, Marin has issued about 20 million pieces and put them on the market. After 4 years of circulation tests, the people of the North Sea Kingdom have basically accepted this small denomination currency with a smaller denomination but very similar to gold coins. Brass is very similar to gold, so this small copper coin looks very much like a gold coin. If Marin hadn't deliberately made the brass coin the same size as the Finny small silver coin, it might have been mistaken for a gold coin. Because it is as golden as a gold coin. Therefore, this small copper coin with a similar appearance to a gold coin is very popular in the market. After many poor people got the brass coins, they often boasted to their friends in a pretentious manner, "Look, I have a gold coin." Moreover, the emergence of this small denomination copper coin has indeed facilitated the transaction and circulation of small commodities. Unlike before, a pfennig silver coin was equivalent to 50 yuan in later generations, and it was impossible to change it when it was taken out. In the past, when people went to the beer hall to drink beer, they often had to keep accounts because they could not change it. Now, the emergence of small brass coins equivalent to 1/8 of the face value of the pfennig silver coin has facilitated the consumption of drunkards. At the same time, it is also convenient for the purchase of small commodities. When issuing small denomination brass coins, this small copper coin was named cent, which is the word for American cents in later generations. At the same time, it also means change. Moreover, Marin also forcibly stipulated that this brass coin was called cent in both German and English, and the pronunciation was the same. The reason for this regulation is to facilitate the integration of English and German in the future when the United Kingdom is united, so that the English and Germans can communicate more closely and avoid confrontation caused by excessive national differences. In order to promote the use of 1-cent copper coins, Marin also took the initiative to reduce the city entry tax from 1 penny to 1 penny copper coin. Moreover, the soldiers guarding the city gate were deliberately not allowed to make change. In this way, people will definitely take the initiative to exchange 1-cent copper coins to pay the city entry tax in order to save money. Otherwise, it would be too much of a loss. You know, if you pay a 1-cent city entry tax, it is 8 times more expensive than paying copper coins. Therefore, when Marin returned to the country, many people in the North Sea had strongly demanded the issuance of 1-cent copper coins. Especially those vendors who often go in and out of the city, as smart as they are definitely not willing to pay the city entry tax with pfennig silver coins. However, the ministers have no right to issue currency. Therefore, they must wait for Marin to come back to decide. Because only the princes can order the minting of coins, and the regent has no right to order the North Sea Mint to mint coins. Kohler mentioned this matter when shipping fake French silver coins. Marin thought about it again and again, and finally decided to issue 500 million 1-cent copper coins to promote domestic commercial circulation. However, on the other hand, he also wanted people to make 500 million nickel-white copper fake French silver coins. It seems that there are not enough people and spiral coin presses. So Marin ordered to expand the scale of the North Sea Mint, recruit more people, and add more machines. However, it takes hundreds of tons of copper to mint 500 million 1-cent copper coins, which is quite expensive. Fortunately, the French copper mine in Sweden now has half of Marin's income. The copper obtained is just right for minting coins. But what Marin didn't expect was that he was thinking about using the copper coins from Sweden, and Sweden had another moth. It turned out that after hearing that Marin might have died in a shipwreck, Sweden was also a little restless, and actually planned to default on Marin's shares in the Falun copper mine. However, there is a lot of noise in Sweden now. Because some timid Swedish nobles are afraid of the revenge of the North Sea Army. After all, the Swedes are few and the country is poor, with a limited number of troops, and can only raise more than 10,000 troops at most. But now the North Sea Kingdom has 30,000 to 40,000 troops on its own land, and its combat effectiveness is very strong, which really scares them. Therefore, the Swedish noble parliament finally decided to wait and see, at least until the North Sea Army was disbanded, they could publicly default on Marin's shares. And their decision finally saved Sweden's life. Because before they finally made up their minds to default on Marin's copper mine shares, Marin appeared. Of course, Marin didn't know about this episode, otherwise, Sweden would definitely be in trouble. Moreover, Marin didn't care about anything else now, and he was very happy in his heart. Because, the first batch of saltpeter produced in Chile has arrived. When setting off for Daming, Marin passed through Panama and asked an exploration team to land in the future port of Iquique in northern Chile with a group of slaves and camels purchased from Egypt, as well as hundreds of solar cookers, and explore saltpeter mines deep in the desert. The leader who landed in Iquique with hundreds of Egyptian slaves, dozens of camels and hundreds of solar cookers was called Cusca, who was originally just a criminal in East Frisia. Of course, the crime he committed was just to offend a branch of the Saxony family that ruled East Frisia. Then, the whole family was thrown into prison, and his parents died of illness in prison. Only Cusca survived because of his youth and strength. After Marin seized the East Frisian earldom, he released all the prisoners persecuted by the Saxony family, except for the criminals who really harmed society. So, Cusca came to the door specifically, recognized Marin as a benefactor, and was willing to die for Marin. Because Cusca's family were originally fishermen, Marin sent him to a navigation school to study and prepare him to be a captain. But the problem is that this Cusca doesn't seem to be very smart. Aben, a fisherman who entered the captain's school like him, had already passed the assessment and became a captain, while Cusca studied for a few more years than Aben before he barely passed. Therefore, Cusca is not very talented and capable. However, there is one thing that Marin knows very well: this person is very loyal and reliable. Outside, whoever dares to say a bad word about Marin, this guy will get angry and want to duel with others. It just so happens that the development of Chilean saltpeter is highly confidential and requires reliable people. So Marin chose Cusca, who is not very capable but very loyal, as the governor of Iquique. And Cusca did not live up to Marin's trust. After landing in Iquique, he did not take the risk of sending people to find saltpeter immediately, but was busy building the Iquique base, especially the layout of the solar cooker for desalination of seawater. After several months of work, Cusca built a seaside stronghold suitable for human habitation in Iquique that could produce a large amount of fresh water every day. Then, he sent troops to supervise the Egyptian slaves, including slave craftsmen who knew saltpeter, to ride camels to the depths of the desert to find saltpeter. When Marin returned from Daming, the troops sent by Kuska found a saltpeter mine deep in the desert dozens of kilometers away from Iquique. Then, he began to send slaves to mine saltpeter and transport it to the port of Iquique by camel. Then, it was sealed and packaged in oil paper bags that Marin got from the paper mill on Cape Breton Island, shipped to Panama, and then shipped from Panama to the mainland. The output of this first batch of Chilean saltpeter was not much, only more than 50 tons, and it had not been purified. Even its main component was sodium saltpeter, not potassium saltpeter for military use. Because sodium nitrate is very easy to deliquesce and deteriorate. In order to preserve it for a long time, sodium nitrate needs to be converted into potassium nitrate. The specific conversion method is also very simple, that is, sodium saltpeter and plant ash, containing K2CO3, are mixed and dissolved to perform ion exchange. Then, based on the principle that potassium nitrate has different solubility at different temperatures, the temperature change of the saturated solution is controlled to precipitate potassium nitrate as military saltpeter. Chapter 1239, Radish and Chinese Cabbage. Of course, this alone is not enough. Because natural sodium saltpeter may also contain impurities such as magnesium ions and calcium ions, which are difficult to separate. Therefore, further processing is required. For example, Ma Lin remembered a good way for people in the Ming dynasty to purify saltpeter. Saltpeter and radish were boiled together. Then, the adsorption of radish was used to further adsorb and remove magnesium ions and calcium ions to achieve the purpose of purification. The saltpeter treated in this way is not easy to deliquesce. If it is stored in a sealed oil paper bag, it can be stored for a long time. Yes, I almost forgot about radish. Ma Lin slapped his head and remembered the sacks of radish seeds he brought back. This is a magic weapon. It can not only purify saltpeter, but also remove the mutton smell of goat milk. It is absolutely omnipotent. It just so happens that radishes can still be planted in late spring and early summer. After all, the growth cycle of radish is very short, only 2 months. After 2 months, a large number of radishes can be produced. Radishes not only have a short growth cycle, but also have a large yield. Especially the large white radish, the yield per mu can reach 10,000 caddies. Of course, the white radish varieties of this era may not be so strong, and the yield per mu is not so high. However, it is still no problem to produce 2 or 3,000 kilograms per mu. Moreover, radishes can be planted 2 or 3 seasons a year, and the total yield is higher. Compared with potatoes and sweet potatoes, radishes are the overlords in the yield world. But unfortunately, radishes cannot be used as staple food, otherwise, they can crush potatoes and sweet potatoes. However, although they cannot be used as staple food, they are also very good vegetables. Marin remembered that before the rise of greenhouse vegetables in the north in later generations, they relied on cabbage and radish as vegetables in winter. Every winter, the vegetable cellars of northerners are full of cabbage and radish. Moreover, radishes can also be pickled into salted dried radishes, which can be preserved for a long time as a supplement to the staple food. For example, it is also good to eat some dried radishes when drinking porridge or eating steamed buns. In fact, because there are no radishes and cabbages in Europe, there is a great shortage of vegetables in winter. Marin thought about it and decided to vigorously promote the cultivation of radishes and cabbages in the North Sea Kingdom. Then, Marin asked Angela to send people to reclaim a large piece of wasteland to plant radish and cabbage. At the same time, each manor has divided a small area for planting radish and cabbage. In this way, the serfs of each manor can eat 2 durable vegetables, cabbage and radish, in winter. If it doesn't work, you can pickle the radish into salty dried radish and pickle the cabbage into sauerkraut. For the specific pickling method, Marin has brought back 2 women from the Ming dynasty to guide farmers to pickle dried radish and sauerkraut. In fact, the use of radish is not only to purify saltpeter, absorb the smell of sheep, and cook or pickle. Because radish can be planted almost 3 or 4 seasons a year, and the yield is large. In addition to the value of radish itself, the leaves of radish are also a kind of vegetable, which can be stir-fried. Or, it can also be used as green fodder to feed livestock. In fact, eating radish leaves is popular only in modern times. In the past, farmers generally disdained radish leaves and fed them to pigs. In any case, radish leaves are very useful as vegetables or for feeding livestock. Moreover, because radishes can be harvested for a season before winter, they can not only be used as vegetables for people, but also as fresh green fodder for livestock. After all, there is no green fodder before late autumn and winter. Being able to eat some fresh radish leaves is also a VIP enjoyment for livestock. Because spring plowing has long passed, Marin asked Angela to summon a large number of serfs in the name of the mistress of the North Sea Kingdom to reclaim wasteland, or find vacant land in the manor under the name of the Hoffman family to plant radishes and cabbages. In fact, cabbage, like radishes, also grows fast and has high yields. The growth cycle of cabbage is also about 2 months, and the yield per moo is also several thousand kilograms. Even in this era, it is no problem to produce 2 or 3,000 kilograms per moo. Marin didn't know how much shock the radishes and cabbages he introduced brought to the European country bumpkins in 16th century Europe, where the yield per moo was only about 100 kilograms. Later, the North Sea Kingdom and later England competed to plant Chinese varieties of radishes and cabbages. And these two vegetables have become the main vegetables in the North Sea Kingdom and the United Kingdom. In addition, there is a joke circulating in Germany and England. An uncle named John walked into a small restaurant and shouted loudly, "Mary, serve sauerkraut," and then shouted, "Another plate of dried radish, spicy." Then, when the southern Europeans of later generations sprayed the Germans in England and northern Germany, they would say, "Hey, those northerners who grew up eating sauerkraut and dried radish." Hundreds of years later, the most classic food in Germany was not sausages, but sauerkraut and dried radish. The northern Chinese felt very cordial when they traveled to Germany, and almost thought they had returned to their hometown. In addition to a lot of radish and cabbage seeds, Marin actually brought back a lot of ready-made dried radishes and sauerkraut. As for fresh radishes and Chinese cabbages, Marin didn't have any. Because he had to sail through tropical areas, fresh radishes and Chinese cabbages could not be preserved. So, he could only bring back some seeds. As for the finished products, he only brought a few jars of sauerkraut that were said to be pickled in old jars, and a lot of salted radishes. However, these salted radishes were not very delicious because they didn't have chili peppers. But sauerkraut was very popular with Marin, because when cooking, Marin could add some chili peppers and ginger. Because it was boring to hide in the secret house, when Marin had nothing to do, he would call Kohler, Schwartz and others, plus himself and Kahn, to cook a pot of sauerkraut fish in the house, make some grilled skewers, and move a barrel of dark beer over. It was so cool to eat sauerkraut fish, eat skewers, and drink dark beer. However, because they all gathered together at night to eat pickled fish, skewers and drink beer, Marin felt that his belly had grown bigger these days. Obviously, this way of eating and drinking was too easy to gain weight. As a last resort, after eating and drinking with Kohler and others every day, Marin did not dare to go to bed immediately, but ran around in the large yard of the house to consume energy. Otherwise, the general's belly would come out. And the pickled fish he invented quickly became popular in the North Sea Kingdom. First, after Kohler, Schwartz and others had eaten pickled fish, they took a lot of pickled cabbage from Marin and cooked it themselves. Later, pickled fish became a famous German dish, and its reputation was comparable to that of truffles and foie gras in France. Then, this method was passed back to China and became a famous dish in Western restaurants. Many ABCs who pretended to be better would snap their fingers and shout when they entered a Western restaurant, "Waiter, give me a German-style pickled fish." Chapter 1240, Malacca's Shocking Change. In fact, the North Sea Kingdom really has the natural conditions to promote pickled fish. The North Sea fishing grounds produce a large number of herrings, cod, mackerel, flounder, etc. every year, and also produce lobsters and oysters. Although there is no black fish that is most suitable for making pickled fish, herring and cod are better in large quantities. Moreover, pickled fish does not have to use black fish. Because of the large quantity, like herring, many people eat it in Europe. However, this way of eating is a bit scary. For example, the Dutch really like to eat herring raw, holding the live fish and eating it with their heads tilted up, which is very barbaric and scary. There is also the famous Swedish canned herring in later generations, which is so smelly that it stinks 10 feet in the wind. So, Marin introduced pickled fish, which saved these barbarians. Later, people used the processing method of pickled fish to process large quantities of herring and cod to make canned pickled fish. With better canned pickled fish, naturally no one is willing to eat the terrible stinky canned herring anymore. Later, canned pickled fish became an important military supply for the North Sea Army, and a large amount was produced every year to supply the army's needs. Because herring, cod, and pickled cabbage are all super cheap. If the quantity is large, a lot of military expenses can be saved. Moreover, the taste is very good. Because Marin vigorously promoted the trawl with a winch and adopted the modern VD trawl that is far superior to the current crossbeam trawl, the fishing efficiency of the North Sea is higher than that of other countries, and the catch is very large. But most of the fish are made into salted fish. Because fresh fish is difficult to preserve. But the taste of salted fish is really not very good, so fresh herring and cod are added with white wine, ginger, chili and other condiments to remove the fishy smell and enhance the flavor, and cooked with pickled cabbage to get a very delicious pickled fish. Then use canning technology to package it, and it becomes a very delicious and durable delicacy. This canned pickled fish made from fresh fish is much more delicious than the smelly dried salted fish. Moreover, its cost is not expensive. Although liquor and ginger are not cheap, they can be mass-produced in Marin's territory, and the cost is not high. As for sauerkraut and fish themselves, there is no cost. Therefore, canned sauerkraut fish is suitable for military supplies and for sale to ordinary people. It is very popular and has a long shelf life. In addition to promoting radishes and Chinese cabbage, Marin also asked fishermen near Port William to try to grow kelp. Several Japanese fishermen he brought back have been sent to fishing villages near Port William to guide local people to cultivate kelp by positioning rafts. However, there is a big problem with this planting method: the raft is easily eaten by shipworms. So, Marin asked Kohler to arrange some tin plate to wrap the bottom of the raft, so that the raft will not be eaten by shipworms before the kelp grows out. In addition to radishes, Chinese cabbage, kelp, etc., Marin also brought various vegetable seeds produced in China. For example, seeds of various vegetables such as winter melon, small greens, cucumbers, and mushrooms, and arranged for people to secretly take them to hidden manors for cultivation. Because Marin has not yet appeared, these vegetables and so on need to be kept secret for the time being. Just when Marin was quietly planting vegetables in his native land, a great change also took place in the distant Strait of Malacca. The Portuguese captured Malacca City. 2 years ago, before Marin set off for the Ming dynasty, in order to sign an agreement with Portugal on the division of territory and clarify the ownership of Dongfan Island, he specially offered a strategy to the Portuguese, to capture the Kuala Lumpur tin mine and lured the Malacca army out of the city for a decisive battle. After receiving the strategy offered by Marin, Manuel I was not vague and immediately reorganized the fleet and army, sending a total of 24 warships and 5,000 infantry to the expedition to Malacca. Of course, the Portuguese did not know that after the fleet led by Columbus Jr. stopped in India, it specially bribed a group of Indian merchants to let them report to the Malacca Kingdom and suggested that the Malacca Kingdom transfer its wealth to inland areas. However, the new Malacca Sultan Ahmad, son of Mahmud, did not adopt this suggestion, and drove away the Indian merchants who went to give advice. Soon after, the Portuguese fleet finally arrived nearby. But the Portuguese fleet did not attack immediately, but bribed several Malay fishermen to go to Kuala Lumpur for reconnaissance. After confirming that Kuala Lumpur did have a huge tin mine, the fleet commander Albuquerque ordered the fleet to approach Klang Island off the coast near Kuala Lumpur and land on the island for repairs. Subsequently, the Portuguese used Klang Island as a springboard to attack the later Port Klang, and then went up the Klang River and marched into Kuala Lumpur. Because Kuala Lumpur was originally the Klang River Valley area, the Portuguese found Kuala Lumpur without much effort. At this time, Kuala Lumpur had just opened up the Kuala Lumpur Valley into a large mining area and smelting base under the heavy investment of the Malacca royal family, and hired a number of Ming dynasty craftsmen to guide the locals in mining and tin smelting. Unexpectedly, the Portuguese invaders came just after the tin mine was put into production. Then, 5,000 Portuguese infantry easily defeated the 2,000 Malacca troops guarding the tin mine who had not had time to build a city, and controlled thousands of miners and craftsmen in the mine. After controlling the Kuala Lumpur tin mine, Albuquerque suspended mining, organized thousands of miners, and began to build a castle. Kuala Lumpur is a valley with rugged terrain, and the previous mining of tin happened to have mined a lot of stone. So, under the coercion of the Portuguese, thousands of Kuala Lumpur tin miners used the ore scraps from the tin mining to build the Kuala Lumpur fort. After the Kuala Lumpur fort was built, the Portuguese allowed the miners to remine and smelt the Kuala Lumpur tin mine. It was not until this time that the reinforcements sent by the Malacca Kingdom arrived late. When the new Malacca Sultan Ahmad learned that the Kuala Lumpur tin mine was occupied, he was shocked and angry. So he sent 20,000 troops to expedition to Kuala Lumpur. However, because he had just ascended the throne and did not have complete control over the army, it took a long time for him to gather 20,000 troops to attack Kuala Lumpur. Then, when the 20,000 Malacca troops with low combat effectiveness arrived in Kuala Lumpur, the Portuguese stone castle had already been built. At first, the Portuguese were also frightened by the 20,000 troops of the Malacca Kingdom. After all, the Portuguese suffered a big loss in Malacca City last time. Therefore, the Portuguese overestimated the combat effectiveness of the Malacca Kingdom's army and chose to hide in the castle for defense. But later, as the Malacca army attacked the newly built Kuala Lumpur castle several times, the Portuguese discovered that although the Malacca army had a large number of people and fierce offensive, the Malacca army was easily repelled by the Portuguese army after attacking the city wall. So, Albuquerque, who had regained his confidence, took the opportunity of the Malacca army having lunch and led 5,000 Portuguese infantry to suddenly rush out of the city and attack the Malacca army's camp. When the Portuguese army approached the Malacca army's camp gate, the Malacca soldiers guarding the camp gate actually went to lunch and forgot to close the camp gate. Then, the Malacca army, caught off guard, was immediately in chaos and was easily defeated by the Portuguese. Only more than 3,000 people fled back in embarrassment. Chapter 1241, Going to Daming for Help. When he heard the news that the 20,000 troops he sent out were annihilated, Malacca Sultan Ahmed was stunned for a long time and did not react. Moreover, just the day before, he received good news that the former general was attacking the enemy fiercely. Suddenly, Ahmed, who had just ascended the throne, felt panic and helpless. At this time, the Indian merchants who had received money to do things came to persuade him to move the treasure. In a panic, Ahmed finally accepted the advice of the Indian merchants and transferred a large amount of treasure in Malacca city to the inland town of Pago. Because, in the small town of Pago, there is a palace for the Sultan. However, because of the lack of confidentiality, the news leaked, which caused the morale of the remaining more than 10,000 soldiers in Malacca city to be hit. The Sultan began to transfer property, proving that he had no confidence to fight the enemy. So, when the Portuguese army began to besiege Malacca city, the morale of the more than 10,000 defenders in the city was very low. Moreover, Albuquerque was very cunning. He deliberately captured a lot of Malay native men, holding sharpened wooden sticks and standing with the more than 4,000 Portuguese troops who came to attack the city, creating the illusion that there are many Portuguese troops. But in fact, the more than 10,000 Malay native men who were pulled by Albuquerque were just responsible for posing and scaring people. But the Malacca soldiers guarding the city didn't know, and they thought that there were really so many Portuguese troops. So, the more they fought, the less confident they were. After more than a month of siege, the morale of the defenders in the city completely collapsed. In desperation, Sultan Ahmed took his family and thousands of core troops and quietly evacuated Malacca city at night. The next morning, when they found that the Sultan had fled with his direct troops, the remaining thousands of Malacca soldiers in the city also abandoned the city and fled. The Portuguese easily occupied Malacca, an important trade transit port in Southeast Asia. Then, Albuquerque ordered the soldiers to rob, and the Portuguese soldiers excitedly started the robbery. But what disappointed the Portuguese was that the treasures were not as much as they had imagined. Among them, Albuquerque's direct troops who were responsible for robbing the Malacca palace were the most unlucky. Because there was really nothing left in the Malacca palace. After all the good things were moved by Sultan Ahmed. However, there were still many treasures in the homes of Malacca nobles and wealthy businessmen. Those Portuguese soldiers who were not Albuquerque's direct line had a good meal this time. Albuquerque was also a little helpless. After all, this was the contract area for robbery that he had arranged before, and he could not regret it. At this time, he wanted to lead his troops to pursue Sultan Ahmed and his party. Unfortunately, the Portuguese army was not very adapted to the climate environment of the tropical jungle. The last time Kuala Lumpur was successfully occupied, it was because Kuala Lumpur could go up the Klang River. But there was no big river up the river in Pago, so it was difficult to find. Therefore, Albuquerque had to stay temporarily and consolidate his rule in Malacca. Anyway, it was a great achievement to be able to capture Malacca, not to mention that the Portuguese army had already occupied the Kuala Lumpur tin mine, which had a large output. Afterwards, Albuquerque divided the Portuguese army into two. One part continued to control the super-large tin mine in Kuala Lumpur and made profits from the output of tin. The other part continued to occupy Malacca. After all, Malacca was an important transit point on the India-Southeast Asia daming trade route, and it could earn a lot of taxes and fees for stopping ships. As long as these two places were managed well, Portugal would have made a lot of money. You know, tin in Europe is very expensive now, more expensive than copper. Of course, if he knew that the tin metal in the Ming dynasty was only 81, he probably wouldn't even be interested in mining. How convenient it would be to go directly to the Ming dynasty to buy tin metal. But the Ming dynasty has always been closed to the outside world, and even the Malacca kingdom would only pay tribute once every 1 or 2 years. Therefore, the low price of tin metal in the Ming dynasty actually did not affect the high price of tin metal in Europe. Unlike the original history, after the Portuguese army robbed the city of Malacca, they did not massacre the city, but arrested most of the able-bodied men in the city and sent them to Kuala Lumpur to mine tin. Let's talk about the two ends. Without mentioning the Portuguese invasion army in Albuquerque, at this time, Malacca Sultan Ahmed, with thousands of remnants and a group of ministers, established a temporary regime with difficulty in the inland town of Pago to maintain the collapse of the Malacca Sultanate. However, compared with the original history where there was no time to bring out any treasures, this time when he fled, Sultan Ahmed still hoarded a lot of treasures in Pago. The Malacca kingdom was established for 100 years, relying on its superior geographical location to engage in trade transit. Its status was no less than that of Ligiapo in later generations. Therefore, the royal family's family background was still very rich. The gold and silver treasures that Sultan Ahmed had transferred to Pago were completely enough to support the Malacca kingdom to continue to exist. Unlike the original history, because of the hasty escape, there was no time to bring wealth, which led to extreme financial difficulties in the country. Then, Sultan Ahmad died in poverty and illness in 1513. In this time and space, because Marin had someone remind Sultan Ahmad in advance, the Sultan still had a lot of money. Therefore, the court institutions of the Malacca kingdom were completely preserved. At the same time, Sultan Ahmad also began to recruit and train new soldiers in order to recapture Malacca City and the Kuala Lumpur tin mines. As the Malacca court in Pago began to resume operations, Najib, who continued to serve as foreign minister, suddenly remembered what Kong Tai said when he went to Guangzhou a few years ago: if the kingdom was invaded, it could ask for help from the Ming dynasty. So, Najib found Sultan Ahmed and said, "Sultan, we can ask for help from the Ming dynasty." "Ask for help from the Ming dynasty?" Sultan Ahmed said hesitantly, "I know that the Ming dynasty is very powerful, but I heard that the Ming dynasty no longer has a treasure fleet, nor does it have sea heroes like Lord Sanbao. Now, the Ming people don't go out to sea, what can they use to save us?" Najib was a little discouraged, but he still insisted, "Whether it works or not, we have to try. Maybe the Ming dynasty will save us." After a pause, Najib said, "Moreover, it seems that the time for a new tribute trade is coming again. We should go to Guangzhou for tribute trade." Ahmed's eyes suddenly lit up. Tribute trade, that is a good thing to make a lot of money. But soon, he was discouraged again. "My dear, I also know that tribute trade is very profitable. However, all our big ships were lost in Malacca. Now even if we want to send ships, there are no big ships suitable for long-distance voyages. There are only small boats left." Najib thought for a while, then looked at the treasures piled on the ground in the Pago Palace, and suddenly his eyes lit up and said, "How about I go by land to Merzing in the east to take a boat to the sea to Ming dynasty? But there are only fishing boats in Merzing, and there are no big ships suitable for Guangzhou." Ahmed obviously knew the situation. "Sure, Sultan, don't you still have a lot of treasures in your hands? I can take the treasures and the certificate of tribute to Ming dynasty, go to Merzing first to take a fishing boat to Siam, Thailand. Then, use the treasure to buy a big ship in Siam. At the same time, purchase a large number of local specialties in Siam. After filling the ship, go to Guangzhou for tribute trade." Najib suggested. "Purchasing tribute goods in Siam? That's not right." Ahmed thought it was a joke. "What's wrong with that? We in Malacca are originally a commercial country, and most of the tribute goods are purchased from other countries. There's nothing wrong with purchasing tribute goods from Siam. By the way, I heard from the Ming dynasty court that we should offer more rhino skins and rhino horns. No problem, we can just take a few more rhino skins and some rhino horns with us. Anyway, these things are not valuable in our country. Okay, it's settled." Ahmed made the decision. In this way, Najib, the Minister of Foreign Affairs of Malacca, took the certificate of compliance for tribute trade with the Ming dynasty, a few rhino skins and some rhino horns purchased from the locals, and a batch of treasures for purchasing large ships and goods, and went to the eastern port of Pengerang by land. Then, set off from there, first go to Siam to buy ships and goods, and finally go to the Ming dynasty for tribute trade, and at the same time ask for help from the Ming dynasty court. Chapter 1242, Fatal Translation. Najib's trip was smooth. After passing through the jungle and arriving at Merzing, Najib forcibly requisitioned several large fishing boats, and then sailed north along the coast of the Malay Peninsula and arrived in Siam, Thailand. Then, Najib took the fleet and entered Ayutthaya city, north of Bangkok in later generations, from the Chao Phraya River. He asked for an audience with Ramathep Bodhi II, the king of the Ayutthaya dynasty of Siam, to meet Najib, but he was surprised to learn that Najib came here on a fishing boat. After all, the Kingdom of Malacca is also a powerful country, and in terms of wealth, it is no less than the Kingdom of Siam. In fact, because it controls the main traffic route of the Strait of Malacca, it is richer than Siam. And Najib's ride this time was actually a shabby fishing boat, which did not fit the image of the local tyrant of the Kingdom of Malacca. Your Majesty, I'm here to warn you. Najib was very smart. He didn't ask for help directly, but said to warn you. Sure enough, Ramatep Bodhi II no longer thought about why Najib came on a small broken fishing boat, but asked what happened in the kingdom of Malacca. Then, Najib started to deceive, describing to Ramatep Bodhi II the terrible fact that a group of yellow-haired, green-eyed monsters, armed with a 500-gene iron hammer, broke through the city of Malacca. Ramatep Bodhi II was so scared that he swallowed his saliva and asked, "Are those evil ghosts really so powerful?" Siamese people believe in Buddhism, and the most terrifying thing in their eyes is probably the evil ghosts. Najib nodded vigorously. Of course, Your Majesty also knows that our capital has 30,000 troops. But facing thousands of yellow-haired evil ghosts, they only lasted for more than a month before they had to retreat into the dense forest. Your capital has the Chao Phraya River leading to the sea, and those yellow-haired demons like to drive big ships ashore to burn, kill and loot. Then, is your envoy coming to ask for help from my Siam? Ramatep Bodhi II asked nervously. His brain is now in a fierce ideological struggle. Should he send troops to rescue Malacca? Najib shook his head and said, to deal with this group of yellow-haired evil spirits, we may need to rely on the power of the superior country. This time, I passed by Siam to purchase some tributes and send them to the superior country, the Ming dynasty, to ask the superior country to send troops to restore the country. Okay, this is a good idea. Hearing that Siam did not need to send troops, Ramatep Bodhi II immediately agreed. Then I will purchase items in Siam to pay tribute. No problem, I will send officials to accompany you to purchase, and I guarantee that you will get them at a low price. As long as Siam is not allowed to send troops, Ramatep Bodhi II will not care about anything else. Moreover, he also hopes that the Malacca issue can be resolved. Otherwise, the Malacca kingdom will really perish and Siam, which is adjacent to the Malacca kingdom, will also suffer. Then, Najib bought a large number of Southeast Asian specialties at a low price in Ayutthaya. Then, he also borrowed 2 large ships from Ramatep Bodhi II and went to Guangzhou as tribute ships. When he arrived at the Guangzhou Maritime Customs, Najib knelt down and cried like he had seen his own father. Ding Haishan, the supervisor of Guangzhou Maritime Customs, was somewhat puzzled. Your Excellency, didn't you report the death of your king last year to the court? Why are you crying again this time? Your Excellency doesn't know that the capital of my Manchuria country was attacked by a group of foreign devils. What? Ding Haishan was shocked. Then, he began to ask for details. Najib naturally did not make up nonsense like he did to scare Siam, but explained the situation honestly, indicating that the enemy was strong but not invincible. Otherwise, it would be bad if the Ming dynasty was scared and dared not rescue. Ding Haishan did not dare to act on his own. After asking the Guangdong Provincial Administration Commissioner, he sent a messenger to convey the news back to the capital in an expedited manner of 800 miles. But the Ming dynasty was a little overwhelmed at this time, because in the 5th year of Zhengde, the Lu Chi peasant uprising broke out. The court mobilized 100,000 troops to suppress it, but it has not been suppressed yet. Therefore, there was no time to take care of foreign military operations. Therefore, Zhengde decided to send officials from the Ministry of Rights to Malacca City in accordance with Li Dongyang's opinion, hoping to repel the Portuguese. Considering that Kong Tai, who was in charge of the affairs of Dongfan Island, was also a Western barbarian, Huang Qinghe, a doctor in the Ministry of Rights who was responsible for the mission to Malacca, stayed in Quanzhou and sent someone to ask Kong Tai to serve as an interpreter. Of course, he was ordered to do so, otherwise, as a doctor, he would not be qualified to ask Kong Tai to serve as an interpreter for him. Kong Tai, who received the imperial edict, was a little surprised at first. But soon, he happily went to Quanzhou to help as a guest interpreter. Because Kong Tai remembered what Marin said to find a way to worsen the relationship between Ming dynasty and Portugal. As a translator, it is easiest to make a move. To give a simple example, when the leaders of the 2 countries meet, one leader says, hello. If the translator translates it normally, it's okay. If it is deliberately translated into "ni ma bai," it will be a big mess, and the worst may be a national war. Think about it, Putin said hello to Trump in Russian, but the translator said to Trump, Putin said fuck you. Given Trump's temper, he would probably fight on the spot. It just so happened that there was no one in the Ming dynasty who understood Portuguese, and no one in Portugal understood Chinese. As the only bridge that could communicate between the 2 sides, it was too easy to do something in the translation process. Of course, Condi certainly couldn't deliberately translate the greetings between the 2 sides into insults like "ni ma bai." After all, both sides are well educated and highly intelligent. If it was translated like this, even a fool could see the problem. However, it is still okay to express the meaning of the words of both sides in different tones. When the fleet arrived in Malacca, Albuquerque personally led people to welcome the Ming envoy Huang Qinghe. After all, Portugal also hopes to have normal trade with the Ming dynasty. Albuquerque enthusiastically extended his hand and intended to shake hands. But Huang Qinghe had no reaction, just cupped his hands. This is normal, this is the etiquette of the East, cupping each other. But Albuquerque's face was not good at that time. He stretched out his hand but no one responded. It was very embarrassing, wasn't it? So he turned his inquiring eyes to Kong Tai, who was acting as a translator. Kong Tai explained in Latin, the common language of European nobles, this is the custom of the Ming dynasty people. Well, they think that shaking hands is too dirty, so the two sides do not touch hands, but just cup each other at a distance. Kong Tai's words are mostly fine, but the sentence, dislikes handshakes are dirty, was deliberately added by him. Sure enough, when he heard Kong Tai say that the other party disliked handshakes, Albuquerque's face suddenly darkened, feeling insulted. After the formal negotiations began, Kong Tai made trouble again. Where do you barbarians come from? Why do you want to occupy the capital of my Ming Empire? Huang Qinghe asked in a literary manner. And Kong Tai's translation was not so polite, where are you barbarians from? Why do you want to attack the territories of my Ming Empire? The translation is similar in meaning, but the tone is very different. Albuquerque was indeed a little annoyed, barbarians. We are the great Portuguese, not barbarians. Please respect our kingdom of Portugal, we are equal. However, when Kong Tai translated it to Huang Qinghe, it became, we are not foreigners, but civilized people, no less civilized than the Ming dynasty. Our kingdom of Portugal is equal to the Ming dynasty. The Portuguese monarch is equal to the Ming emperor. There is nothing wrong with this translation, and it is even very pertinent. But the bad thing is that the people of the Ming dynasty do not agree. Humph. As expected, Huang Qinghe was dissatisfied. You know, the people of the Ming dynasty had a deep, heavenly kingdom complex. Especially the scholars of the Ming dynasty, they naturally had a feeling of superiority. For a small country like Portugal, to dare to say that it is on an equal footing with the Ming dynasty is simply an offense to the Ming dynasty. Moreover, at this time, Kong Tai kindly told Huang Qinghe that the territory of Portugal is about the same size as the Zhejiang province of the Ming dynasty. Well, Huang Qinghe was even more unhappy. Even a force as big as Mongolia, which has several provinces, has to pay tribute to the Ming dynasty. You, a small country equivalent to the smallest province of the Ming dynasty, actually want to be on an equal footing with the Ming dynasty. So, Huang Qinghe said angrily, Portugal is only about the same size as the smallest province of the Ming dynasty. The king of Portugal is roughly equivalent to a governor of the Ming dynasty. How can he be on an equal footing with the Ming dynasty? Then, Kong Tai translated it truthfully to Albuquerque. He said that the king of Portugal is only equivalent to the governor of a province of the Ming dynasty, and is not worthy of being compared with the emperor of the Ming dynasty with dozens of provinces. This translation was flawless, but Albuquerque was angry. After all, Portugal is his homeland, and the king of Portugal is also the monarch he is loyal to. Looking down on the king of Portugal is looking down on him. Moreover, Portugal also has provinces. But a province of Portugal is only equivalent to a state or a prefecture in the Ming dynasty, and a governor is only equivalent to the mayor of a prefecture-level city in later generations. Using the governor to describe the king of Portugal does mean looking down on people. And Albuquerque didn't know that a province of the Ming dynasty was larger than Portugal. So, the two sides quarreled in different languages. Kong Tai was caught in the middle, seemingly trying to persuade the quarrel, but in fact he was fanning the flames, and leaving no trace. As a result, the two sides naturally broke down in the talks. Albuquerque finally said that Malacca and Kuala Lumpur were already part of the Portuguese kingdom and would never be returned. Huang Qinghe threatened angrily, just wait for the heavenly soldiers to arrive. Then he walked away. Before leaving, Conti helplessly spread his hands to Albuquerque and said, there's nothing we can do. The people of the Ming dynasty are just so arrogant. Then in a blink of an eye, he followed Huang Qinghe like a dog. Bah, what the hell? Albuquerque didn't know how much damage his impulse had caused Portugal today. If it was the Portuguese foreign minister Ricardo, he wouldn't be so tough and might even pretend to compromise. But Albuquerque was just a military general who liked to be straightforward. Coupled with Conti's secret instigation, he inevitably fell out with the Ming dynasty. Chapter 1243 Prohibition of Portuguese Tribute. Najib's journey was very smooth. After passing through the jungle and arriving at Merzing, Najib forcibly requisitioned several large fishing boats, and then sailed north along the coast of the Malay Peninsula and arrived in Siam. Then, Najib took the fleet and entered Ayutthaya city from the Chao Phraya River. He asked for an audience with Ramati Bodhi II, the king of the Ayutthaya dynasty of Siam, to meet Najib, but he was surprised to learn that Najib came here on a fishing boat. After all, the kingdom of Malacca is also a powerful country, and in terms of wealth, it is no less than the kingdom of Siam. In fact, because it controls the main traffic route of the Strait of Malacca, it is richer than Siam. And Najib's ride this time was actually a shabby fishing boat, which does not fit the image of the local tyrant of the kingdom of Malacca. Your Majesty, I'm here to warn you. Najib was very smart. He didn't ask for help directly, but said to warn. Sure enough, Ramathapati II no longer thought about why Najib came on a small fishing boat, but asked what happened to the Malacca kingdom. Then, Najib started to deceive and describe to Ramathapati II the terrible fact that a group of yellow-haired, green-eyed monsters, holding a 500-gene iron hammer, broke through the city of Malacca. Ramathapati II was so scared that he swallowed his saliva and asked, "Are those evil ghosts really so powerful?" Siamese people believe in Buddhism, and the most terrifying thing in their eyes is probably the evil ghosts. Najib nodded vigorously. Of course, Your Majesty also knows that our capital has 30,000 troops. But facing thousands of yellow-haired evil ghosts, they only held out for more than a month and had to retreat into the dense forest. Your capital has the Chao Phraya River leading to the sea, and those yellow-haired demons like to drive big ships ashore to burn, kill and loot. So is your envoy here to ask for help from my Siam? Ramathapati II asked nervously. His mind was now in a fierce struggle. Should he send troops to rescue Malacca? Najib shook his head and said, to deal with this group of yellow-haired evil spirits, we may need to rely on the power of the superior country. This time, I passed through Siam to purchase some tributes and send them to the superior country, Ming dynasty, to ask the superior country to send troops to restore the country. Okay, this is a good idea. Hearing that Siam did not need to send troops, Ramathap Bodhi II immediately agreed. Then I will purchase items in Siam to pay tribute. No problem, I will send officials to accompany you to purchase, and I guarantee that they will be sold at a low price. As long as Siam was not allowed to send troops, Ramathap Bodhi II would not care about anything else. Moreover, he also hoped that the Malacca issue could be resolved. Otherwise, the Malacca kingdom would really perish, and Siam, which was adjacent to the Malacca kingdom, would also suffer. Then, Najib bought a large number of Southeast Asian specialties at a low price in Ayutthaya. Then, he also borrowed 2 large ships from Ramathap Bodhi II to go to Guangzhou as tribute ships. When he arrived at the Guangzhou Maritime Customs, Naji knelt down and cried like he had seen his father. Ding Haishan, the supervisor of the Guangzhou Maritime Customs, was puzzled. Your Excellency, didn't you report the death of your king last year to the court? Why are you crying again this time? Your Excellency doesn't know that the capital of my Manchuria country was attacked by a group of foreign devils. What? Ding Haishan was shocked. Then, he began to ask for details. Naji naturally did not make up nonsense like he did to scare Siam, but explained the situation honestly, indicating that the enemy was strong but not invincible. Otherwise, it would be bad if the Ming dynasty was scared and did not dare to rescue. Ding Haishan did not dare to act on his own. After asking the Guangdong Provincial Administration Commissioner, he sent a messenger to send the news back to the capital in an expedited manner of 800 miles. But the Ming dynasty was a little busy at this time, because the Lu Chi peasant uprising broke out in the 5th year of Zhengde. The court mobilized 100,000 troops to suppress it, but it has not been suppressed yet. Therefore, there was no time to take care of foreign military operations. Therefore, Zhengde decided to send officials from the Ministry of Rights to Malacca City in accordance with Li Dongyang's opinion, hoping to repel the Portuguese. Considering that Kong Tai, who was in charge of the affairs of Dongfan Island, was also a Western barbarian, Huang Qinghe, a doctor in the Ministry of Rights who was responsible for the mission to Malacca, stayed in Quanzhou and sent someone to ask Kong Tai to serve as an interpreter. Of course, he was ordered to do so, otherwise, as a doctor, he would not be qualified to ask Kong Tai to serve as an interpreter for him. Kong Tai, who received the imperial edict, was a little surprised at first. But soon, he happily went to Quanzhou to help as a guest interpreter. Because Kong Tai remembered what Marin said to find a way to worsen the relationship between Ming dynasty and Portugal. As a translator, it is easiest to make a move. To give a simple example, when the leaders of the two countries meet, one leader says, hello. If the translator translates it normally, it's okay. If it is deliberately translated into "ni ma bai," it will be a big mess, and the worst may be a national war. Think about it, Putin said hello to Trump in Russian, but the translator said to Trump, Putin said fuck you. Given Trump's temper, he would probably fight on the spot. It just so happened that there was no one in the Ming dynasty who understood Portuguese, and no one in Portugal understood Chinese. As the only bridge that could communicate between the two sides, it was too easy to do something in the translation process. Of course, Conde certainly couldn't deliberately translate the greetings between the two sides into insults like "Ni ma bai." After all, both sides are well-educated and highly intelligent. If it was translated like this, even a fool could see the problem. However, it is still okay to express the meaning of the words of both sides in different tones. When the fleet arrived in Malacca, Albuquerque personally led people to welcome the Ming envoy Huang Qinghe. After all, Portugal also hopes to have normal trade with the Ming dynasty. Albuquerque enthusiastically extended his hand and intended to shake hands. But Huang Qinghe had no reaction, just cupped his hands. This is normal, this is the etiquette of the East, cupping each other. But Albuquerque's face was not good at that time. He stretched out his hand but no one responded. It was very embarrassing, wasn't it? So he turned his inquiring eyes to Kong Tai, who was acting as a translator. Kong Tai explained in Latin, this is the custom of the Ming dynasty people. Well, they think that shaking hands is too dirty, so the two sides do not touch hands, but just cup each other at a distance. Kong Tai's words were mostly fine, but the sentence, dislikes handshakes are dirty, was deliberately added by him. Sure enough, when he heard Kong Tai say that the other party disliked handshakes, Albuquerque's face suddenly darkened, feeling insulted. After the formal negotiations began, Kong Tai made trouble again. Where did you barbarians come from? Why did you forcibly occupy the capital of my Ming Empire's vassal state? Huang Qinghe asked in a literary manner. And Kong Tai's translation was not so polite, where did you barbarians come from? Why did you attack the territories of my Ming Empire? The translation was similar in meaning, but the tone was very different. Albuquerque was indeed a little annoyed, barbarians. We are the great Portuguese, not barbarians. Please respect our kingdom of Portugal, we are equals. However, when Kong Tai translated it to Huang Qinghe, it became. Chapter 1244, that old guy is not dead yet. Not to mention the Ming dynasty, Europe has also been turbulent during this period. Although the coalition of princes was a bit slow, it eventually gathered more than 60,000 troops at the border of the Duchy of Lorraine and the County of Baden. Then, without waiting for Count Christopher I of Baden to beg for mercy, they rushed into the north of the County of Baden. However, because the food and grass of tens of thousands of troops had not been delivered in time, and it was difficult to unify the command, the army temporarily stopped in the northern part of the County of Baden and did not move forward. At the same time, they ignored the request for peace from Count Christopher I of Baden. Unlike the last battle against Marin, the last time only two countries, the electorate of Saxony and the electorate of Brandenburg, sent troops, and Joachim I was still very young, so he naturally followed Frederick III. Therefore, it was very convenient to command the 50,000 troops of the Bossa coalition last time, and they just had to listen to Frederick III. But this time is different. This time, there are more than 30 coalitions of princes, and there are more than a dozen powerful ones. Therefore, this time not only was the supply problem serious, but the competition for command was also very fierce. In theory, as the leader of the princes, Frederick III should have been the commander-in-chief of the coalition. However, it was probably the failure of the reward for the Battle of Lübeck that left Frederick III with a heavy psychological shadow. So this time, Frederick III, who had the highest reputation, refused to serve as the commander-in-chief. Then, other nobles started competing to become the commander-in-chief of the coalition. Of course, they were not fighting for interests, but for reputation. After all, this was a coalition of more than 30 princes. If you serve as the commander-in-chief of the coalition, it means that this person is the leader among the princes. This is the same as the spring and autumn hegemony. Whoever becomes the commander-in-chief of the coalition is almost the leader among the princes. Although Frederick III, the Elector of Saxony, has a higher reputation, it is also very good to compete to be a leader. In Germany, what you need is the kind of prestige that calls friends. Then, the most qualified dukes present, including Joachim I of Brandenburg, began to compete secretly to be the leader. In fact, in terms of status, Joachim I was one of the 7 electors, the King of Bohemia did not come, and the Palatine elector only sent troops but did not come because of his old age. In this case, Joachim I had a chance to become the commander-in-chief. However, several dukes who competed with him for the position of commander-in-chief believed that Joachim I had no command ability and had performed poorly in the Battle of Lübeck. Therefore, it is better to choose another capable person. So, several powerful dukes still competed. In this way, more than 60,000 princes' coalition troops strangely stopped in the north of Baden to fight internally and did not attack Baden. However, this also gave Baden the Swabian League to which Baden belonged an illusion that the princes' coalition troops were here to scare people. So, whether it was Baden or the princes of the Swabian League, they would not attack Baden. Even Maximilian I did not think the princes' coalition was very determined, but thought they were just here to intimidate and blackmail Baden. Then, Maximilian I, who originally planned to mobilize the Austrian army to Switzerland for support, actually stopped the mobilization of the army. Then, people were sent to mediate the border friction between the Duchy of Lorraine and the County of Baden. What? The emperor sent people to mediate? The princes were a little dumbfounded. What's going on? Aren't we here to attack the emperor? But soon, Frederick III, the leader of the princes, brightened his eyes and said, "Okay, send someone to talk to the emperor's representative." But refused to talk to the representative of the County of Baden. Why is that? Joachim I asked in confusion. It's just to delay time. If we send people to negotiate with the emperor's representative, the Habsburg family will not be prepared in Switzerland. Frederick III said casually. Since being defeated by Marin, Frederick III no longer follows the dead rules, but has become more strategic. Of course, he was wise before. However, under the stimulation of Marin, he liked to use tricks more. In addition, under the planning of Frederick III, Duke Anthony of Lorraine was finally selected as the military commander. Because Frederick III felt that the cause of this war was the territorial dispute between Lorraine and the County of Baden. Therefore, it is reasonable to let Duke Anthony serve as the commander of the coalition forces. Although Duke Anthony is only 23 years old, this time the troops were sent out under his banner, and it was more appropriate to let him serve as the commander. Even Frederick III personally said to the envoy of Maximilian I, "We are here to help, and it is Duke Anthony who is in charge." In this way, the envoy of the Habsburg family was indeed deceived. Because, under normal circumstances, if there is any evil intention, Frederick III should be the commander-in-chief. Because of the constant disputes within the coalition, Marin was also very anxious waiting in his homeland. Why not do it? Marin hoped that after the coalition of princes took action, he would start fighting on his side. In this way, the allied forces of the princes trapped in Switzerland had no time to take care of the North Sea. And Marin could safely deal with his opponents. But to Marin's disappointment, not only did the allied forces of the princes not take action, but several hostile countries around the North Sea did not move either. It was only heard that they had mobilized their forces in their country, but there was no sign of attacking the North Sea. Kohler, send someone to investigate those countries to see why they didn't take action. So Kohler sent someone to investigate. A few days later, the spy came back on a fast horse to report, "It's like this, several countries around the North Sea with ill intentions, because they are afraid of our 4 local legions, dare not rashly send troops." Marin suddenly realized. Yes, although it was rumored that Marin had an accident, the 4 legions in the North Sea were still there. It would be fine if the allied forces of the princes came together, but the surrounding vassal states with ulterior motives would only have a maximum of 30,000 to 40,000 troops. Moreover, this also counted the conscripted peasant soldiers. Such strength is not the opponent of the 4 legions of the North Sea Kingdom. What's more, the North Sea Kingdom has 2 legions in England. Faced with such a powerful North Sea army, even if the surrounding countries have ideas, they have to hold back temporarily, so as not to fail to beat others and be beaten. After thinking it through, Marin decided to deliberately show weakness first, give these countries the courage to let them attack the North Sea Kingdom first. At that time, Marin will be able to legitimately defend. However, when discussing several opponents, a piece of news shocked Marin. What? The old guy Conrad is not dead yet? Conrad is the protagonist Conrad of the bishopric of Munster, from the Rietberg family. Originally, according to history, he should have died in 1508. However, because of the appearance of Marin, the German history was modified too much. As a result, Bishop Conrad, who was supposed to die in 1508, was still alive and kicking in 1512, and even discussed with others to cheat the North Sea Kingdom. According to Kohler's intelligence, several surrounding princes were trying to steal the secret of the North Sea Kingdom's high grain yield, and Bishop Conrad was one of them. This old man even planned to take advantage of the prince's attack on the North Sea Kingdom to fish in troubled waters and strive to seize a large piece of fiefdom in the South Munster area for the Rietberg family. Is this old man tired of living? Not only does he want to steal agricultural secrets, he also wants land. Marin was stunned by Bishop Conrad's actions. Chapter 1245 Horse Wind and Show of Weakness. Marin thought about it and it seemed that there was nothing wrong with Bishop Conrad's plan. Why? Because although Bishop Conrad himself did not have the strength to fight against the North Sea Kingdom, the prince's coalition did. If the North Sea army was unstable due to Marin's death, the North Sea army might not be able to stop it once the prince's coalition attacked. And Bishop Conrad can take advantage of the opportunity to fish in troubled waters. He was the original bishop prince in the Munster area and had a good control over the South Munster area. Although Marin stationed 2,000 or 3,000 soldiers in Munster city, if the prince's coalition came, these people would be sent food. And with Bishop Conrad's prestige in the South Munster area, if the coalition came, the North Sea Kingdom would definitely be in chaos. At that time, it would still be possible for Bishop Conrad to seize a large piece of fiefdom in the South Munster area for his family. You know, the Rietberg earldom of the Rietberg family is only more than 200 square kilometers, which is only equivalent to a few small towns. The area of South Munster is as high as 5,900 square kilometers, which is more than 20 times that of the Rietberg county. It is always possible to take away a piece of land. After all, he is now the actual controller of the South Munster area and has the conditions to do something. But Bishop Conrad didn't know that Marin had asked Kohler to arrange spies to monitor his every move. He secretly contacted several princes who also coveted the agricultural secrets and land of the North Sea Kingdom, and was discovered and followed by Kohler's men. It seems that we have to get rid of this restless old guy. Marin made up his mind. But how can we get rid of him? Lord? Kohler asked. It's not appropriate to assassinate him. It's easy for people to suspect me. After all, if he dies, the South Munster area will return to my hands, and I am the direct beneficiary. Poisoning is not a good idea. If he dies of poisoning, people will still suspect me. Marin was a little distressed. Then, he thought for a while and asked Kohler, is there anything wrong with the old man Conrad? Kohler flipped through the information and replied, he is obese, it seems, a bit like the high blood pressure you mentioned. Marin rolled his eyes, isn't this nonsense? Many fat people have high blood pressure. It seems to be a solution. Marin suddenly remembered that it seems that high blood pressure in the elderly can easily lead to death. Once an attack occurs, if antihypertensive drugs are not taken in time, it is easy to cause sudden death. Coincidentally, Marin had read a suspense detective novel in his previous life, which described that a killer deliberately gave a lustful fat old man an overdose of aphrodisiac drugs. Then, the old man died suddenly at that time. In China, this way of death has a name, called horse wind. This term is very vivid, describing a man who is like galloping on a horse at that time. If this man has high blood pressure, coronary heart disease and other problems, once he plays too hard, it is easy to cause vascular spasm, accelerated blood flow, increased blood pressure, induce cardiovascular and cerebrovascular diseases, and lead to death. Especially some elderly obese men, because of high blood pressure, if they take some aphrodisiac drugs, they are likely to die in a woman's belly. In the detective novel that Marin read in his previous life, a fat old man was plotted against in this way. Thinking of this, Marin asked again, does this Conrad have a lustful problem? Kohler flipped through the information and replied, he used to have an illegitimate daughter, but she died. However, in the past 2 years, because of his old age, he is a little powerless, so he is rarely seen. However, a nun who had an affair with him before is still taking care of his daily life in the Munster Cathedral. Nun and old bishop, what a perfect match, let's do this. Marin said happily. You mean? Kohler seemed to understand a little. Send our experts to sneak into the Munster Cathedral and feed some aphrodisiac drugs to Bishop Conrad and his former confidant. Remember, give old man Conrad more drugs. Bishop Conrad was already over 60 years old, and was obese and had high blood pressure. Giving him more aphrodisiac drugs was basically courting death, not to mention feeding him too much aphrodisiac drugs. However, in this way, Marin's suspicion can be washed away. Because even if a pharmacist found that Conrad had taken aphrodisiac drugs, he would not suspect that it was murder. After all, Europeans of this era could not think of such a way of murdering people. Moreover, it was very normal for an old man to take aphrodisiac drugs in order to do that. Although the death was funny, it seemed reasonable. In addition, there were no powerful detectives like Sherlock Holmes and Conan in this era, and they would not deduce such a far-fetched murder method. Even this way of death was a scandal of the church. If ordinary people wanted to know, the church would help cover it up. The only problem is how to get Bishop Conrad to start doing that with his old lover in time. If he died suddenly without doing that, it would be suspicious. Therefore, Marin's final plan is to give Bishop Conrad and the nun a smaller dose first. Then, when the two start to do it, find a way to knock them out, and then feed Bishop Conrad an overdose of aphrodisiac. With such a strong medicine, Bishop Conrad, who has high blood pressure, will not be finished. However, Marin thought again and again, and decided to wait until the princes took action before moving on old man Conrad. Because if Bishop Conrad died early and frightened those people, Marin would not be able to defend himself properly. So Marin decided to be patient for the time being and continue to show weakness. But according to the current situation, although the princes are ready to move, they dare not take the initiative to attack the North Sea Kingdom. Looking at them, it seems that they are waiting for the princes' coalition to solve the problems in the south, and then come together to deal with the North Sea Kingdom. How can Marin let them wait? If the princes' coalition army came, even if Marin could defeat his opponent, he would certainly suffer huge losses, and he would also offend most of the German princes. Therefore, Marin decided to lure these princes in advance, induce them to launch attacks on their own, and give Marin an excuse to counterattack. But as the spy reported, now there are 4 10,000-man legions in the North Sea, with a total of 40,000 regular troops. And those princes generally do not have more than 10,000 domestic troops. Counting together, at most 30,000 or 40,000 people. Moreover, most of them are conscripts with little combat effectiveness, which is completely incomparable with Marin's regular army. In this case, the princes did not dare to act rashly, but waited for the princes' coalition army to do the most correct thing. In order to induce those princes to attack the North Sea Kingdom, first of all, they had to deliberately weaken the North Sea Kingdom's troops and horses so that they could see the hope of defeating the North Sea Kingdom. Therefore, Marin once again summoned the 4 local legion commanders, Stade, Wagner, Steindorf and Hanks, and began to deploy matters related to showing weakness to induce the enemy to attack. And the first step of showing weakness was to let Hanks' Scottish Legion create the illusion of mutiny. Chapter 1246, Military Mutiny, Part 1. The Scottish Legion is the latest legion established by the North Sea Kingdom, and its main body is the Scottish Highland Infantry prisoners of war. Frankly speaking, these people may not be very loyal to the North Sea Kingdom. Therefore, in this newly established 6th Legion, Marin specially transferred 3,000 elite veterans and 7,000 Scottish prisoners of war to suppress possible resistance at any time. In fact, at the beginning of its establishment, there were indeed scattered riots among the 7,000 Scottish Highland Infantry in the 6th Legion, but they were all suppressed by Hanks with the help of 3,000 German veterans. Fortunately, when Marin was selecting the Scottish Highland Infantry, he kicked out all the officers and Scottish leaders with leadership ability. Therefore, none of the remaining Scottish Highland Infantry who had no opinions had the ability to call for help from a high place. Several small-scale riots at the beginning of its establishment were easily suppressed because no one responded. Now, 2 years later, Hanks has better control over the 7,000 Scottish Highland Infantry of the 6th Legion. Of course, the outside world does not know that Hanks has completely controlled the 6th Legion. Because Hanks is too young, only in his 20s. At this age, in the traditional German army, he has just become a squad leader or a heavy knight. Germany has always had a tradition of trusting the elderly, and it is difficult for young people to stand out. Because the Germans are more pragmatic, they will not let you take on important tasks without years of experience. Just like the Chinese tradition says, no hair on the mouth, no firm work, the rigid Germans also trust older people more. Therefore, the princes of various countries are not optimistic about the young Hanks, and have long been waiting to see Hanks' jokes. After all, the 6th Army is in a special situation, and most of the soldiers are Scottish surrendered soldiers, which are difficult to control. If there are problems with several legions of the North Sea Kingdom, the 6th Army, which is mainly composed of Scottish surrendered soldiers, should be the most problematic. Therefore, if Marin wants to show weakness, he must first let the 6th Army have problems. And how to make the 6th Army have problems? Of course, pretend to mutiny. But Marin is worried that if the mutiny is not well controlled, it may become a real mutiny. So, he called several legion commanders to discuss how to act. Regarding Marin's concerns, Stade thought for a moment and suggested, how about I draw 5,000 elite veterans from the 1st Army to the south to secretly support and protect? If a mutiny really occurs, we should decisively suppress it. Schwartz nodded repeatedly, well, this is a good idea, safe and secure. So, how to make the 6th Army look like a mutiny? We can conduct internal exercises and pretend to blow up the camp. Then, one chases and the other flees, fleeing to the north. The theme of the 6th Army is the Scots. According to common sense, if the Scottish infantry really mutinied, they should return to their hometown. Therefore, their escape route should be to the north, and then seize ships in Emden Port to cross the sea back to Scotland. Hank said. But the problem is that it seems that some officers of the 6th Army have been bribed. If it is just a pretend internal conflict, the truth will definitely be passed on by those people. At that time, the princes who know the truth will definitely not be fooled. Wagner retorted. How about I just order the arrest? Anyway, my men have found out which ones are problematic. Just control them directly to prevent the news from leaking out. Saul suggested. Not appropriate. If no news can be passed on, that would be abnormal. It would make those princes suspicious. Schwartz retorted. How about I deliberately let those traitors take a vacation, and then take action? Hanks suggested. No, if those traitors take a vacation together, then the enemy may guess that those people have been exposed. Kohler immediately objected. Looking at the arguing people, Marin thought about it, recalled the plot of the TV series in his previous life, and suddenly said, how about this, before the action, we control those traitors, and use their lives and the lives of their families to threaten them to pass on false information to those princes who are trying to win them over. After thinking about it, several people all agreed. But Kohler raised an objection. What if those princes send people to verify the news in person? Generally speaking, those who come to verify the news are often their fathers and brothers. This is simple, just let those people make excuses and say, because of the mutiny in the army, all officers are not allowed to leave the barracks. In this way, we can avoid contact with them. Everyone thought that the army had mutinied, so how could officers leave the barracks at will? This excuse was flawless. So everyone agreed to this plan and let Hanks conduct an internal confrontation exercise, one chasing and one escaping, and then seize the ship in Emden port and go out to sea. But the destination of the sea is actually a secret camp on the East Frisian peninsula. In this way, when the war begins, they can quickly return to the mainland to fight and not be too far away. But it is not enough for only the Sixth Army to have problems. After all, there are 3 main armies in the mainland, and those princes are not opponents. Moreover, the Sixth Army is mainly composed of Scottish people, so there is a reason for mutiny. The other 3 armies are all German armies, and there is no reason to mutiny. Schwartz worried. Also, England also has our 2 legions. If they are transferred back to the mainland, we will not be afraid even if the prince's coalition forces come. If only 1 new legion has problems, it may not be enough. Stade said. So what do you mean, let 2 more legions have problems? Marin asked. It may not be enough if 2 legions have problems. At least 3 or more legions must have problems before those princes dare to take action on their own. Schwartz and Stade said together. The other people nodded one after another. The North Sea Legion belongs to the modern army with strong combat effectiveness. Even if there are only 2 legions of 20,000 people, those princes are not opponents. After all, those princes generally have only a few thousand standing troops in their country, and they will forcibly recruit a few thousand civilians as conscripts during wartime. Even so, they can only gather 30,000 to 40,000 people at most. But in terms of combat effectiveness, they are probably not as good as the 2 10,000-man legions of the North Sea. That means, we have to let 4 more legions have problems. Marin thought. Several people nodded. Marin's eyes suddenly lit up and said, King Edward of England secretly tried to win over Sakara and Sivag to take the 4th and 5th legions to England a while ago. It just so happens that I will let Sakara and Sivag pretend to surrender to England. In this way, these 2 legions will not seem to belong to the North Sea Kingdom. This is a good idea. Several people nodded in agreement. But don't make things worse and let the 2 legions really belong to Edward. Saul said worriedly. Don't worry, Sakara and Sivag know that I am not dead, and they will not really surrender to England. After all, even if they don't mention the degree of loyalty, they are afraid that I will lead troops to settle accounts with them. Marin has 4 legions in his hands, and it is no problem to deal with the 4th and 5th legions. Moreover, Sakara is Marin's diehard, and the possibility of rebellion is very small. Even Sakara's family is in the city of Auric. What about the remaining 1st, 2nd, and 3rd legions? These are all old legions of the North Sea Kingdom. There is no reason to mutiny. Schwartz said. This is indeed a problem. Let me think about it. Marin fell into deep thought. Chapter 1247, Military Mutiny, Part 2, At this time, Kohler suggested, how about using the excuse that the army is out of food? It's normal for the soldiers to make trouble when the army has no food. Kohler is in charge of money, and even knows the importance of money and food to the army. Marin nodded and said, this is a good idea, but if the food is really cut off, maybe the army will really mutiny, it's too dangerous. The other people also nodded in agreement. Indeed, the army's food cut is not a joke. Even if it is a rumor, if the soldiers really believe it, it is easy to cause a big mess. In the army, panic must not appear. If there is a rumor of food cut, the army will inevitably be demoralized, and even a big mess will occur. When Cao Cao and Yuan Shu were fighting, because of the food cut, they had to unjustly kill Wang Hu, a warehouse official in charge of food, to calm the panic of the army. Therefore, although Kohler's opinion is good, it is extremely dangerous. Once it backfires, there may be a big mess. If the army is really in chaos, it will be useless even if Marin shows up at that time. Everyone fell into silence. After a long while, Wagner, the commander of the 2nd Legion, suddenly proposed, "How about we pretend to engage in a power struggle?" Power struggle? What do you mean? Tell me in detail. Marin became interested. Wagner cleared his throat and said, "According to the general idea, if the master really died and the young master was young, the Grand Duchess should be in charge. At the moment of power transition, shouldn't the Grand Duchess control the military power?" You mean? Marin's eyes suddenly lit up. I remember that the lady's family is a knight family, with old Lord Nelson and Master Louis, right? Wagner asked. At this time, old men such as Schwartz and Kohler laughed. Because Wagner was wrong. In fact, among the people present, only Wagner and Hanks were not old men under Marin, but joined later. Therefore, they did not know Angela's true origin, and thought that Angela was the daughter of the Nelson knight family arranged by Marin as a cover. Marin also laughed. Considering that the two of them had already entered the core circle, he did not intend to hide it, so he explained to Wagner and Hanks, "Angela is not from the Nelson family, but from Italy." Italy? Then your father-in-law is the controller of Rome. Marin did not say it clearly, but Wagner and Hanks opened their mouths in surprise. The controller of Rome, that is the Pope. Now you understand why our Archduke has such a close relationship with the Holy See. Otherwise, the Holy See would not give us such a large territory in the bishopric of Munster. Schwartz laughed. Wagner quickly took a big sip of tea to calm his excitement. He and Hanks looked at each other and saw surprise in each other's eyes. With such a powerful backer, it is no wonder that their lord can come forward so quickly. For ordinary people of low birth, it is difficult for the church to recognize it. Marin's ability to gain a place in the German prince's court is inseparable from the support of the church. After all, the church also occupies nearly half of the power in the court of princes. Following such a boss with a background, the future is bright. After calming down, Wagner continued, "I know the origin of Lady Angela, but the outside world doesn't know. So, if the Grand Duke is missing, Lady Angela wants to control the army, shouldn't she use our own family to control the army?" You mean, let old Nelson and Louis Nelson be the commanders of the army? Marin seemed to understand Wagner's meaning a little bit. That's right, of course, this is just a unilateral order from the lady. We can let the lady pretend to give an order, let old Nelson take over the position of commander of the 2nd Army, and let young Master Louis Nelson be the commander of the 3rd Army. Then, you and Steindorf pretend to disobey the order and pretend to fall out with Auric. Marin understood and made an excuse. That's right. If both I and Corps Commander Steindorf refuse to accept Auric's command, then the North Sea Kingdom will only have the 1st Corps left. At that time, are you afraid that the princes will not be tempted? Marin thought for a while and said, "It's very good to be careful, but the problem is that the 2nd Corps is also stationed in Auric. Logically, if the 2nd Corps does not accept the command of the Auric Palace, the 1st Corps must suppress it. Is it possible that the 1st Corps and the 2nd Corps will pretend to fight in Auric? Isn't this inappropriate? Although Auric is heavily guarded and spies are not easy to operate. However, because it is the capital, there are also foreign envoys stationed there. If the two corps start to fight, whether it is a real fight or a fake fight, those envoys can still see it. If the performance is too realistic, it will cause great damage to Auric. Therefore, this is a bit inappropriate." Wagner also realized this situation. After thinking about it, he suggested, "How about letting Lord Schwartz's 5-man regent group find an excuse to transfer the 2nd Army away from Auric?" Marin thought about it and nodded in agreement. At the beginning, he transferred the 2nd Army to Auric because he was afraid that something would happen to him. At that time, there would be 2 strongest armies in the capital, and they could also protect the safety of Caesar and Angela. But now that he has returned home safely, there is no need for that. Because everything is under his control. After thinking about it, he planned to let Schwartz and others transfer the 2nd Army to the city of Oldenburg for garrison. In this way, the 2nd Army that left Auric would have the possibility of establishing its own mountain when it arrived in the local area. After the meeting, Marin talked to Angela about it at night, asking her to cooperate with Schwartz and others to put on a good show. Early the next morning, Schwartz, Stade, Kohler and Sauer, the 4 members of the 5-member regent group who attended the meeting yesterday made the decision to transfer the Second Army to Oldenburg for garrison. Hayter did not attend the meeting yesterday and was a little confused. Kohler pulled him aside and whispered a few words, and Hayter immediately agreed. In this way, the Second Army, led by Corps Commander Wagner, left Aurich and went to the capital of Oldenburg province in the east to station in Oldenburg city. Soon after, the 6th Army of the North Sea stationed in the Ruhr area suddenly mutinized. It is said that the Scottish soldiers of the 6th Army, missing their hometown, launched a mutiny one night despite the obstruction of the young army commander Hanks. They rushed out of the camp, headed north, crossed the Lippe River and headed north to the largest port of Emden in the North Sea, obviously wanting to take a ship back home, and Hanks was chasing them with 3,000 German soldiers. Of course, this news was deliberately spread by Kohler's spies in the territories of several vassal states around the North Sea that coveted the agricultural secrets and even the territory of the North Sea, in order to let the vassal states know that something had happened in the North Sea. The North Sea Army mutinied. The North Sea Army mutinied. This is the biggest news in northern Germany in recent times. A few days later, another big news came from the North Sea Kingdom. Angela, the Grand Duchess of the North Sea Kingdom, announced that she had determined that the Grand Duke of the North Sea Kingdom, Marin Hoffman, had been in trouble, and announced that she would be the regent on behalf of her son, and she had the support of the 5-member regency group. Then, Lady Angela ordered her father, Old Nelson, to take over the position of the commander of the Second Army. At the same time, she ordered her younger brother, Louis Nelson, to take over the position of the commander of the Third Army. Obviously, Lady Angela wanted to control the army in her own hands. But what people didn't expect was that Wagner, the commander of the Second Army of the North Sea Kingdom, and Steindorf, the commander of the Third Army, both publicly expressed their dissatisfaction and believed that Old Nelson and his son were not capable of serving as the commander of the army, so they refused to obey the order. Then, Wagner, the commander of the Second Army, was afraid of being hit by the strongest First Army of the North Sea Kingdom, so he led the army directly to leave Oldenburg and headed east to join the Third Army. It seems that the Second and Third Armies of the North Sea Kingdom are planning to unite to fight against the regent Grand Duchess. The army of the North Sea Kingdom seems to be out of control. The Second and Third Armies, led by their respective commanders, have collectively rebelled. The only local army that truly obeys the Aurich Palace is the First Army stationed in Aurich. Chapter 1248 Conspiracy. Next, the wonderful dramas of the North Sea Kingdom were staged one after another. The Scottish soldiers of the 6th Army of the North Sea Kingdom successfully arrived at the port of Emden. Before the First Army reacted, they robbed several merchant ships in the port of Emden and sailed out to sea. And the commander of the 6th Army, Hanks, who was responsible for the pursuit and suppression, also took a boat to chase out to sea. In order to make the performance more realistic, the 7,000 Scottish soldiers who escaped also looted several manors along the way for the purpose of stealing food. After all, once they rebelled, it would be impossible for Aurich to provide them with food. Moreover, if the mutinous soldiers were well behaved all the way, it would be suspicious. Therefore, the 7,000 Scottish soldiers planned to loot several manors along the way and robbed a lot of food. Of course, because it was a play, although they were very rough and beat people when they robbed food, they did not kill people. But it was inevitable that the strong men of the manors who stopped them from stealing food were beaten black and blue. Even in some manors, some houses were deliberately burned. Because, it seems a bit fake that the houses were not burned during the war. After the incident, several countries around the North Sea Kingdom sent spies, disguised as merchants, to walk along the Ems River to check the situation along the way. Before, the Scottish soldiers of the 6th Legion went north along the Ems River. Since the opening of the Munster Canal connecting the Lippe River and the Ems River has been an important channel for internal shipping in the North Sea. The North Sea Kingdom does not allow foreign merchants to land at will, but it allows merchants from other countries to take the Ems River route by boat. Therefore, several princes who were eyeing the North Sea Kingdom sent spies, dressed as merchants, took inland ships, walked on the Ems River, and observed the situation along the way. They could not land, but they clearly saw thick smoke coming out of many manors along the river. And some manors that were looted earlier, many houses along the river were also burned. The serf women whose houses were burned cried loudly, and their cries could be heard far away. After these spies disguised as merchants left, they reported that the mutiny of the 6th Legion had indeed caused great chaos in the North Sea Kingdom. They burned, killed and looted along the way. In fact, they didn't know that there were burning, looting and plundering, but no killing, and no one in the manor was missing. However, the household registration management of the North Sea Kingdom was very strict, and they did not dare to land casually and could not see the actual situation. Therefore, misjudgment naturally occurred. In a palace in Wolfenbüttel, a small town about 8.1 kilometers south of Brunswick, at the northern foot of the Harz Mountains, several dukes and earls gathered together to listen to reports from several spies. "My lords, I am Paul, the chief spy under my lord the Duke. I disguised myself as a merchant going to Emden, and specially took a small passenger ship with a navigation license from the North Sea Kingdom through the Munster Canal and entered the Ems River Basin. Along the way, my subordinates observed that most of the manors along the river seemed to have been looted. When I passed those villages, I saw that many houses in many villages were burned. Even some houses in some villages were still emitting thick smoke. And in these looted villages, bursts of crying were heard. It seems that they were severely harmed by those Scottish soldiers. On the main seat, the 50-year-old man called the Duke by the spy was playing with a porcelain wine glass in his hand, and seemed to be thinking. After thinking for a while, the person on the main seat asked, "Bull, have you gone ashore to investigate?" The spy named Bull shook his head. "Your Excellency the Duke, the North Sea is heavily guarded. Although there have been riots, the light cavalry guarding the Ems River does not seem to be affected. All foreign passenger ships passing through the Ems River must sail in a team after entering the Ems River, and are not allowed to sail alone. When the passenger ship team passes by, there must be light cavalry on the shore to monitor the fleet. They even bring dogs to guard at night. It is as difficult as climbing to the sky to go ashore. It is said that when the Grand Duke of Beihai was in power, a ferocious wolfhound called Alsace Wolfhound, German Shepherd, was introduced from Alsace to patrol the night. When the fleet docked to rest at night, someone would take the wolfhound to keep on duty. Once someone was found jumping off the ship or landing, the wolfhound would bark non-stop, and then attract a large group of cavalry to chase. Last year, I sent my subordinates to dive ashore to investigate the situation. As a result, they were discovered by the wolfhound. In the end, two brothers with extraordinary skills were chased to death by a team of Beihai light cavalry, and their bodies were hung by the river for public display." After a pause, he continued, "Moreover, Beihai implemented a household registration system with extremely strict management. Ordinary serfs could not leave their hometowns at will. Whether entering the city or going on a long journey, they needed the permission of the manor. Only with the issuance of a paper certificate could they go on a long journey smoothly. Otherwise, without a certificate, it would be easy to be checked and arrested by patrolling cavalry. That kind of paper certificate is called road permit in Beihai. The most terrifying thing is that it is useless to just have a pass. Once you are checked by the patrolling cavalry, you need to say the code. It is said that it is called a password, which is to prevent outsiders from sneaking in. Then we send elite troops to seize the pass on the road and learn the code, and we can send our own people to sneak in soon." The Duke interrupted. Bull shook his head and said, "It's useless, Duke. The pass is said to be changed every month, and the code is also changed every few days. Sometimes, today is this pass and code, and tomorrow it will be changed immediately. Even the same pass has different codes on different dates. If you make a mistake, you will be arrested and imprisoned immediately. We have tried to impersonate before, but we didn't know that their pass and code often change, and then we lost several brothers. Hiss, the defense of the North Sea is so strict." An earl smacked his lips. If it weren't for such strict defense, how could the secret of their high grain yield be kept until now? The Duke on the main seat thought it was natural. "But, in this way, we can't get the secret," the earl said depressedly. "It's okay. The North Sea army is in chaos this time. We will wait for an opportunity to join forces, attack directly, and rob secrets. Aren't we supposed to wait for the coalition of princes?" The earl said in surprise. "TSK, if we really have to wait for Lord Frederick III and his men to come, will there be any share for us? By then, don't even get a sip of soup." The Duke on the main seat said disdainfully. The other dukes and earls present nodded in agreement. Their strength is not weak, but it is also limited. In the German region, those with more than 10,000 standing troops are generally considered top forces. For example, the Habsburg family, the North Sea Kingdom, and several great generals. Even the princely states where the 7 great generals are located may not maintain more than 10,000 standing troops for a long time. Therefore, they need to unite to fight against the Habsburg family. In countries with several princes, the standing army generally has only a few thousand people, or even no more than 5,000. Counting the militia recruited during wartime, it can exceed 10,000. Therefore, their strength is neither high nor low. Even if they unite, they cannot beat the 2 legions of the North Sea Kingdom. Therefore, several princes had planned to let the prince's coalition army take the lead, and then they would fish in troubled waters. At the same time, they also secretly sent spies to try to steal secrets. Unfortunately, since the North Sea Kingdom implemented a road permit system similar to that of the Ming dynasty, and raised a large number of light cavalry as mounted police to patrol the four directions every day, it was extremely difficult for spies to infiltrate. In desperation, these princes thought of uniting. They even wanted to ask the prince's coalition army to take the lead. But now, they suddenly heard that the North Sea army was in turmoil and only one legion was left to obey the command of the Auric Palace, so these princes were tempted. According to the Duke, if we join forces, even if we can't take down Auric, we can still encroach on other parts of the North Sea. Most importantly, they want to seize the secret recipe for the high agricultural yield of the North Sea by attacking and looting the countryside of the North Sea. As for the land, it would be best if we could take a large piece of it. Chapter 1249, Count Charles. At this time, the Duke on the main seat suddenly said to one of the princes, "Lord Charles, what do you think?" This Lord Charles is the former Duke of Guise, Charles II, and now Count of Geldern, Charles I. In terms of hatred for the North Sea Kingdom, Count Charles is far more than the others present. It can even be said that the other few people coveted the agricultural secrets of the North Sea Kingdom, while Charles wanted to retaliate against the North Sea Kingdom. Of course, you can also make some money by the way. After all, if the North Sea Kingdom had not sent troops to help Duke John II of Clever, the Duchy of Clever would not have been able to defeat the powerful Duchy of Guise at that time. At the beginning, the Duchy of Guise was one of the few powerful countries in the German region that could pull out tens of thousands of elite troops, and it could even challenge the Habsburg family. Otherwise, the French would not support the Duchy of Guise. However, because of the intervention of Marin's North Sea Kingdom, Charles lost the West Frisia that he had already obtained. Later, he even lost the largest financial source and largest territory of the Duchy of Guise, the Lower Guise region. Moreover, he was demoted to an earl, and was only in charge of a small territory of several hundred square kilometers in the Upper Gedesi area. You know, before, the strength of the several dukes and earls present was far inferior to his. If they were together, he would definitely be allowed to take the seat and give orders. Unlike now, because he lost most of his fiefdoms, he was even demoted to an earl. Therefore, when gathering, the current duke had to sit in the main seat. After all, he is only an earl now, and his fiefdom is small, so he has to bow his head. Moreover, the alliance of these countries was actually initiated by Count Charles. At the beginning, several countries were close to the North Sea Kingdom, so they all noticed the high grain yield of the North Sea Kingdom. Therefore, they all sent people to steal secrets, but all failed. Later, Charlie's men found that several other groups of people were also trying to steal the secrets of the North Sea Kingdom. After thinking about it, he decided to unite these people. Therefore, the real planner of this small alliance of princes is Charlie. As for the Duke in the main seat, because he is a Duke and now has the strongest strength, he became the leader. However, the several princes present were actually not as capable as Charles. After all, Charles was able to recover the Duchy of Guise, which had been destroyed by the bold Charles, from Maximilian I, and made the Duchy of Guise one of the most powerful countries in Germany. He was very capable. If it weren't for the bug of Marin, well, it seems that it would have been finished later. Because, in history, it was Charles V who was rampant in Europe who killed the Duchy of Guise. That guy had the powerful power of the Spanish Empire and the Habsburg family, and even overthrew France, the backer of the Duchy of Guise. It was naturally a piece of cake to clean up a Duchy of Guise that relied on France. So, it was actually the same whether there was Marin or not. It was just that the appearance of Marin made the Duchy of Guise finish decades in advance. Charlie didn't know that the Duchy of Guise would be finished with or without Marin, but he knew that without Marin bullying him, he was still a powerful duke of the powerful Duchy of Guise. Even West Frisia had been taken down. Therefore, he wanted revenge. Not only did he want to seize the agricultural secrets of the North Sea Kingdom, but he also wanted to seize the land of the North Sea Kingdom. In his opinion, without Marin, the decline of the North Sea Kingdom was inevitable. However, he did not expect that the North Sea Kingdom would start to get chaotic so soon. And his goal was also very clear, to share agricultural secrets with several princes, and at the same time to seize the western part of the Ruhr area near the Upper Guise area, which was the territory that Marin exchanged with the Principality of Clever. At least, the land area of the Principality of Guise should be more than doubled. In this way, it will be possible to rise back to the Principality. Moreover, he actually has greater ambitions in his heart. The reason why these princes were drawn in addition to the fact that they were plotting the secrets of the North Sea Kingdom like the Earldom of Geldern, was that they were not strong enough and needed an alliance, which was the most important reason why Charlie drew them together. In addition, there was another important reason that Charlie did not say. He felt that these allies were not strong, and if they joined forces with them, they would not be kicked out. If he cooperated with real big guys like Frederick III, Charlie would be very worried. Because he was worried that the earldom of Gelden would not get any spoils due to its weak strength. After all, if the partner is too powerful, you have to be prepared to be kicked away. Therefore, he chose these princes. Each of them is not weak, but not strong either. Together, they can achieve a balance and prevent one from swallowing the other. When the land is divided after the victory, even if the earldom of Gelden cannot get the lion's share, it can still get a small share. After all, the North Sea Kingdom has tens of thousands of square kilometers of land. If it can get back a few thousand square kilometers of land, it can make up for most of the previous losses. Even in his heart, Earl Charles actually looked down on these allies. If possible, he even planned to annex these stupid allies in the future. At least, we have to swallow up one or two of them so that our own territory can be expanded as much as possible. Hearing the question from the Duke in the main seat, Count Charles of Gelden concealed the disdain and ambition in his eyes, cleared his throat, and said, "The civil strife in the North Sea Army is naturally a good thing for us. However, don't forget that on the other side of the North Sea, in England and Scotland, there are two 10,000-man legions of the North Sea. If these two legions return to help in the war, our coalition forces will still not be able to defeat them. Therefore, we need to send a group of spies to England to inquire about the news and see what the two legions are doing. Only when those two legions are out of Auric's control, will we have a chance of winning. Otherwise, we may still suffer a great loss." The princes present nodded one after another, so the Duke in the main seat immediately ordered to send a group of spies to England to inquire about the movements of the two legions. What made these princes very happy was that within a few days, news came from England that the two legions of the North Sea Kingdom in England had switched to King Edward of England. It turned out that while Marin arranged for the domestic army to pretend to be in civil strife, he also specially arranged for the 4th Legion and the 5th Legion to pretend to surrender to Edward. Of course, in order to prevent Edward from really misunderstanding, Marin specially wrote to Edward and explained the reason. When King Edward received Marin's secret letter, he was also sweating. He didn't know that Marin was still alive. If he knew, how dare he win over Marin's army? You know, in his eyes, Marin is an out-and-out old imbi, the kind who pits whoever he sees. Edward was almost scared to death by offending such a person. You know, there are about 40,000 standing troops in England now. Among them, 20,000 are Marins. And the 20,000 people he controls, in terms of combat effectiveness, are not as good as Marin's 2 legions. So, in order to calm Marin's anger, he immediately replied, expressing his willingness to cooperate in acting. Moreover, he reiterated the validity of his daughter Margaret's engagement with Caesar. The subtext is, "In-laws, we are in-laws, can I forget about my previous efforts to win over your men?" Marin would not really turn against Edward, so he also replied, "I will send the top pediatrician invited from the Ming dynasty to stay in London in a while to protect Princess Margaret's health." Obviously, Marin has revealed this matter. Then, King Edward of England followed the script and publicly extended an olive branch to Saqqara and Sivag. After receiving a signal from Marin, Saqqara and Sivag also publicly expressed their willingness to fight for the King of England. When the news reached Germany, several princes who were targeting the North Sea Kingdom were overjoyed and gathered together for a drink, and all got drunk happily. After sobering up, several princes returned to their respective countries and officially began to prepare for war. And their goal was clear: first capture the fertilizer processing plants in North Munster province and obtain the fertilizer secrets. Then the army continued to move north, surrounded Auric, and forced the North Sea Kingdom to cede territory. Chapter 1250, Mother and Son Fall Out. In the backyard of Auric Palace, Caesar, who had just finished class, ran to Angela's room angrily, threw down his books, and yelled at Angela, "Mother, why did you let Grandpa and Uncle Louis replace the positions of Wagner Corps Commander and Steindorf Corps Commander? Now it's good, something big has happened, the 2 old legions of the North Sea Kingdom are not listening to orders. If the prince's legions hadn't happened to attack the county of Baden, we might be finished." Caesar didn't know that old Nelson and Louis Nelson were not his blood relatives. After all, he was still young, and Marin and Angela planned to tell him when he was older. Angela was a little confused and was caught off guard by Caesar's sudden outburst. For a while, she didn't know what to say. Because Caesar was young, he couldn't rule the country. Therefore, after Marin's accident, the civil and military officials of the North Sea Kingdom unanimously agreed that Caesar should wait until he was 18 years old to rule the country. And the age of auditors should be at least 16 years old. Now Caesar is only 10 years old, so for the past 8 years, Caesar can only learn from his teachers and cannot handle government affairs. Originally, Schwartz, Stade, Kohler, Sauer and Hayter formed a regency group to jointly exercise the power of the Grand Duke until Caesar came of age. But some time ago, somehow, the 5-member regency group suddenly agreed to let Angela serve as the regent queen mother, and the 5 people assisted from the side. That's fine, but after Angela came to power, in order to quickly grasp the military power, she rashly wanted to replace the commanders of the 2nd and 3rd Corps and appoint her father and brother instead. Then, the original 2 corps commanders were angered and began to refuse to obey Auric's orders, and joined forces to split the local area. It is said that now both corps are stationed in the province of Schleswig, and privately intercepted the food and taxes of the provinces of Schleswig and Jutland as the expenses of the 2 corps. Although the 2 legions did not directly declare their separation from the North Sea Kingdom, their act of intercepting grain and taxes was equivalent to betraying Auric. Moreover, the Eastern Prime Minister Mikkel, who presided over the political affairs of the eastern provinces in Schleswig City, was said to have been held hostage. In other words, the 2 major provinces in the eastern part of the Grand Duchy of the North Sea, Jutland and Schleswig, are actually out of the control of the North Sea Kingdom. The reason why they did not declare independence may be because the 2 legion commanders were of too low origin, and no one was willing to recognize their declaration of independence. Instead of declaring independence, it is better to take advantage of the young master to complete the actual control of Schleswig and Jutland, and then wait until the time is right to declare independence. Of course, the above are all speculations of the princes of other principalities. In addition, some of the news was secretly released by Marin in order to make some countries believe that the North Sea Kingdom only had the 1st Legion left. Moreover, Mikkel, the Prime Minister of the Eastern North Sea Kingdom, actually knew the truth a long time ago. He is Schwartz's father-in-law and has also served as the Prime Minister of Denmark. For this old fox, Marin can still believe that he will not leak the secret easily. Sure enough, Prime Minister Michael's performance was wonderful. He fully interpreted the role of a bullied Prime Minister who was forced to cooperate with the unreasonable military. Every time he left the Prime Minister's residence and walked on the street, Michael's face was full of anger and worry, and he looked bullied. Some officers with different intentions in Schleswig City and foreign spy merchants saw Michael's performance. So, the strategic fraud of the North Sea Kingdom was very successful as a whole. But the problem is that Caesar, who was only 10 years old, didn't know. In order to prevent leaks, Marin asked Angela, Schwartz and others not to tell Caesar the truth, so that Caesar would not accidentally leak the news. Caesar learned about the situation outside through the gossip of others, and he was immediately angry. You know, the North Sea Kingdom is his North Sea Kingdom. Moreover, his father Marin told him before he left political power comes out of the barrel of a gun. Therefore, although Caesar was young, he was very clear about the importance of the North Sea Army. However, his mother Angela made a series of stupid moves, forcing 2 powerful old legions to rebel at this very sensitive moment, which was simply courting death. Yes, courting death. This is what his father told him before he left, and he also gave an example, an old woman named Tsishi, who had no ability but messed around and brought down a powerful empire. He felt more and more that his mother Angela seemed to be similar to that old woman named Tsishi. Obviously, she is not very capable, but she likes to make decisions. If Uncle Schwartz and his men made the decision, they would not be so reckless. So, this time Caesar came to Angela to ask Angela to give up the regency. Mother, I know you want to control the legion in your own hands. However, you are not very capable, and you did bad things with good intentions. Father once said that professional matters should be done by professionals. Since you don't have that ability, give up the regency. At least, Uncle Schwartz and his men are more professional than you. Caesar's words were very impolite, which was equivalent to accusing Angela of incompetence in person. Of course, this was also related to Caesar's young age and lack of the art of speaking. It was so blunt that it naturally hurt Angela's heart. Woo 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 woo. Angela didn't know how to answer, but just kept crying. Speaking of which, Angela was really aggrieved. It wasn't me who wanted to do this, it was your father who insisted that I take the lead. Such a stupid role was actually played by my beautiful and intelligent aunt. It was really embarrassing. Caesar was a little overwhelmed when he saw Angela crying non-stop. However, because he was angry, he did not comfort Angela, but left angrily. After the blow of losing his father, Caesar's mind has matured a lot and has a stronger sense of responsibility. But children are children after all, and there are always things that are not well considered. For example, he didn't think about why the 5 uncles of the regency group chose to support his mother's regent so decisively. They are all his father's absolute confidants. After Caesar left, Angela cried even more sadly. Being called incompetent by her own son in person. Although the actual situation may be true, as a son, how can you say that about your mother? That night, Angela came to the secret house through the secret passage. Seeing Marin, Angela lost her tenderness and affection. Instead, she pinched and twisted Marin severely. Hey, let go, Angela. Are you crazy? Why are you torturing me like this? Marin's face was full of confusion. Woo, it's all your fault. Caesar misunderstood me during the day and thought I was messing with his country. He even said directly that I was incompetent and shouldn't interfere in state affairs. Humph, if you hadn't asked me to play this stupid role, why would I be disliked by my son? I will pinch you and twist you. Marin immediately begged for mercy. After pinching, Angela said depressedly, my son has misunderstood me now and even turned against me. What do you think I should do? After that, Marin's ear was twisted. Hey, let go. Marin immediately grimaced in pain. Humph, you are uncomfortable with this little pain. Don't you know how much pain I feel today? Marin bared his teeth, took a breath, and suddenly an idea flashed. You said Caesar turned against you today. Nonsense. Angela said unhappily, and then twisted the soft flesh on Marin's waist. Okay. Marin clapped his hands happily. What did you say? Angela was already full of black lines. No, I mean, we should send people to spread the news that Caesar turned against you. Then, Angela's hand was more powerful. Do you want me to embarrass myself in front of everyone? No, dear, what I mean is that if this news spreads, I think our opponents will be happier. In this way, they will be more confident in sending troops, and will be more arrogant and frivolous. Then, the possibility of us defeating them will be greater. Then I deserve to be embarrassed. No. Afterwards, I will teach him a lesson, and let him apologize and repent to you. Let go. My ears are going to fall off. I was wrong. Marin begged for mercy with bared teeth.